All right, ladies and gentlemen, time to get down with my final Devil Fruit deep dive for One Piece. Man, to think that I did this for at least 2 weeks now, and this is going to be the last day. Let's make this a good one. So let's begin. Yo, peoples! Kyushu92 here, and welcome to my Devil Fruit deep dive in the world of One Piece. We've already covered Paramecia, we've already covered Zoan, now it's time to cover the final, and by far my favorite class of Devil Fruits, Logia types. So, to get you started on what Logia types Devil Fruits are, they're essentially the type of fruits that allow you to essentially turn into an element. Paramecia, we've already covered, is the fruits that allow you to achieve superhuman feats, or stuff that would seem superhuman, such as splitting your body into many pieces, or causing your body to slim down and become so smooth that stuff slides off of you, and you can slide across the ground, or turning your entire body or pieces of your body into blades. Kitty, hello! Good to see you! I got my TED Talk glasses on because I'm about to be an instructor today. And they allow you to do different things that would be considered basically like superpowers, like on the most basic of levels, such as creating bubbles that allow you to smooth over a person's body, nerfing their attack damage or their capacity to be combative, or turning people into living laundry while also slightly washing away their hearts so that their wanton for violence is slightly lessened, or creating wax, or being able to turn anyone that has impure or, thoughts of love on you into stone, such as that. That's Paramecia. Then we covered the Zoan class, which is probably one of the most simplistic ones to explain, which is a category of devil fruits that allow you to turn into animals, and not just limited to just normal animals, but also extends to mythological creatures and prehistoric creatures as well, and allows you to turn into a full form of that creature, a hybrid of that creature, or your normal human form. When it comes to mythical types of that variety, they tend to have superpowers that are associated with that specific creature that you normally wouldn't see on a normal Zoan. And that encompasses from, creatures like the Phoenix, or the Yamata no Orochi, or the Nine-Tailed Fox, or even as far as deities that essentially allow you the power of literally using your imagination to create any instance you want for yourself, being able to manipulate your body to pretty much the limits of your own imagination. That's Zoan. With Logia, they essentially allow you to turn into any element, create that element, manipulate that element, and also grants you a form of invulnerability to a certain degree where, unless you have haki, you are essentially invincible to the person who's trying to harm you. But we're going to go ahead and cover that. So, Logia. Logia is one of the 3 devil fruit types, being the rarest, discounting mythical Zoans, and most powerful, because sure, we've already covered the Quake fruit, which is known as the strongest Paramecia type devil fruit in the world, and also one of the strongest devil fruits in the world of One Piece. But Logia types can pretty much operate on a much wider scale in terms of just straight up power, due to the fact that they can command the very elements themselves depending on the fruit in question. Someone wielding a Logia power can transform their body into an element of nature at will, as well as create and control vast amounts of that element. The term Logia was first used when Rocky heard about Enel's or Eneru's devil fruit abilities. Overview. Those with Logia powers can physically transform into a particular element of nature, on top of creating that element from their body in nigh endless quantities to control as they please. The transformative aspect of Logia serves to distinguish them from other devil fruit types, particularly Paramecia abilities that allow for the generation of substances, example being basically any of the food-based type abilities of the Charlotte Children of the Big Mom Pirates, or in cases of Katakuri, he's capable of creating a nigh endless amount of mochi, and he's able to morph his body into mochi, but he is not classified as a Logia. simply because the nature of his devil fruit is that the substance he's creating is not an element, but a man-made substance. Such paramecias only allow one to create, not become, one's respective substance, barring one known exception denoted as special for its kind. As I said, Katakuri's Mochi Mochi no Mi. All canon Logia powers pertain to elements that are raw and naturally occurring, while behaving as they would in nature, whereas substance-creating paramecias involve man-made materials that sometimes exhibit unnatural esoteric properties. Logia elements may come in all major states of matter, including solids, liquids, gases, and plasmas, as well as energy. Bodies transformed by a Logia ability are completely invulnerable to most attacks, as when they are hit and thus blown out of shape, they will simply reform without any damage, and seemingly automatically at that. Some people have trained their abilities, their Logia abilities, to the point where they can just transform into the element in question on reflex. The moment something hits their body, or before it hits their bodies transform into that element. So in some cases, if you're going by the chili fruit or the ice fruit, that person's body will get chipped away from the hit, but will just immediately reform. In the case of the Pika no Mi, the glint fruit, that attack will just pass straight through their body because that user turns their body into light and it just phases through them. And in the cases of the mag fruit, you are essentially turning your body into lava, and if it's a physical object, chances are that object will just straight up melt from the scorching heat the moment it passes through the body, leaving absolutely no harm to the individual. This applies to both blunt and sharp force damage, as well as severed limbs and decapitation. So in the case of, bodies being blown apart and thrown all over the place, the greatest example would be Kizaru's first showcase of his glint powers, when he was blown apart by Scratchman Apu during the Saba Ori arc. His whole midsection was his whole upper body was just exploded. And then he had his, I want to say either his left or right hand completely blown off, completely sliced off, and it went sailing into the air. And then his entire upper torso got blown apart as well, only for him to just shortly have his own legs stand up as if nothing happened to him, and then the rest of his body just reform in place with absolutely no damage done to his person. It's unclear how much conscious control is required to transform one's body to negate attacks. While no Logia user has ever shown difficulty or the inability to bypass attacks, there have been instances both of forceful contact with a user's real body and of unwilling transformation into their element. And this goes back to Chapter 1, One Piece Novel A, Volume 1. Ace unconsciously becomes fire after eating the Mera no Mi. So when you're a Logia user and you're experiencing the power to turn into an element for the very first time, you can, on occasion, have the unconscious... You can have your powers just kind of erupt on you because you have no control over it. But a lot of Logia users that we've seen have a very vast control over their own power. So the only time we've seen this is during the episode, during the chapters when Sabo gets his hands on the Mera no Mi, the Flare fruit, and after he uses Fire Fist for the first time, he sees that his whole body's on fire, and he can't extinguish it quickly, but then shortly later on, he gains full control over it, and you never see this instance of where he doesn't have control over this element ever again. While some Logia types grant elemental bodies that, though invulnerable and capable of seamless regeneration, are still solid, or at least substantive, those Logias based on gaseous, plasmic, or energy-based elements are wholly intangible in practical terms, though their form may still potentially be disrupted by attacks. The biggest key here is Haki. There are a few ways to negate the invulnerability granted by Logia abilities and successfully injure a transformed Logia user, including the standard Devil Fruit weaknesses to Seawater and Sea Stone, which prevent the user from accessing their Devil Fruit abilities. All Logia fruits also have a weakness to Armament Haki, as they can be injured by an opponent using this Haki. Certain Logia fruits also have individual weaknesses, which reflect the element's natural vulnerabilities. Such instances include liquids such as water canceling out sand, which is how Luffy was able to beat Crocodile, because during their future encounters during the Alabasta arc, Luffy found that one, if he covers his body in water, then he's able to physically touch Crocodile, because sand cannot remain loose under the effects of water. It gets muddy, it gets packed together, and well, if you've ever built a sandcastle, then you kind of understand how that works. Electrical insulators such as rubber canceling out lightning, which is the case of Luffy going up against Enoru, making Luffy the pretty much the enemy, the quintessential enemy to Enoru's electrical abilities, because rubber does not conduct electricity. Even Enoru's strongest attacks on Luffy really didn't work because, electricity doesn't work on rubber. And it did absolutely nothing to him, much to Enoru's shock. And magma canceling out fire. Magma is a higher degree, on a higher plane of heat in comparison to fire. Whereas fire can consume a whole lot, magma can literally consume fire in and of itself. It can literally smother fire while also being tons of degrees hotter. In order to generate their substance, a Logia user must first transform part of their body into the substance, which then multiplies as they please. This differs from substance-generating paramecia users, most of whom can generate substances directly from their physical body or even from thin air. As long as the reproducing substance is attached to the user's body, it is considered part of their body, though it appears that this is no longer the case once the user splits it off. And this is volume 57, chapter 554. Let's see. And that is during the Marineford War. I believe they are referencing, hold on. And that's chapter 554. Let's see here. As we go to the library. Oh, wait, I forgot my phone. Hold on, let me grab that too. So if we go to chapter 554, Admiral Akainu. And this is also the moment where Akainu used his Great Eruption, or Daifunka, in order to explode the giant iceberg that Jozu threw at them. Hold on, let me put this over here. Ah, Ginger, good to see you. Let me see. Ah, okay. Okay, I got chat off to the side. I wanted to do it smoothly in order to have chat off to the side. So would rubber file under the skin one like Luffy? No, it wouldn't. Because Luffy cannot create the rubber. So it would not, and he's able to morph his body in any way that he wants to due to the very nature of his fruit. However, he cannot create rubber itself. It only extends to Luffy's body, and that's as far as it goes. However, with his Gear 5 awakening, he can extend the rubber property throughout the environment, but that's as far as it goes. He can't just create rubber from nothing. That's what differentiates Luffy from, average Logia users. Also, Ginger, good to see you. When do you think One Piece will come to an end? We are still a ways off. We are still a long ways off. I feel like we are not going to see the end of One Piece for a minute. Not too bad. Okay, let me see. Not too bad. Just eating some lunch before getting back to working on the land. Ah, I see. Well, let's make this a good one. Let's make this a good one then. But yeah, I can't really say when One Piece is going to end, because even though we're going through the Egghead arc right now, it is still too soon to say when One Piece is reaching its final stages, because we're in the final saga of the series. However, I feel like we are a long way off before One Piece ends, so I can't really even give you an accurate estimate of when we'll be done with One Piece, because we don't know. And it's hard to tell, especially with the way that Oda writes. It's kind of difficult to tell, oh, we're getting closer to the end. Oh, we're getting closer to the end. Seeing as how there hasn't been a single chapter since we started the final saga, especially during Egghead, and we haven't even made it to Elbaf yet, it is still too soon to say when I think One Piece is going to end. A lot of people want to say 4, maybe 5 years, but it might be in that time frame. It might be, but that's all I can really go on. So, going back to it, let's see. Can generate substances directly from their physical body or even from thin air. As long as the reproducing substance is attached to the user's body, it is considered part of their body, though it appears that this is no longer the case once the user splits it off. If they encounter their substance in nature, a Logia user can merge with it, and the natural substance will become part of their body as well. Oda said it would end by 2027, but with how the chapters are released, it does feel like we'll be here for another 8 years. That's the reason why I said that even though if Oda said this, if he said this, then you have to take into account the amount of breaks that we have to go through whenever we are reading One Piece. The amount of times we have to go on breaks. What if Oda has to go on break for his health? Well, that could be like another month or so of him resting in order for us to get back to One Piece. So even though we can see numbers, there's surely no way of knowing when it could possibly end. If they encounter their substance in nature, a Logia user can merge with it and the natural substance will become part of their body as well. So say, for example, a Kainu you're fighting a Kainu and it's in a hot area and there happens to be lava around the Kainu that he has not created. Him being a lava man himself, he can enter into this lava with absolutely no harm to his person and take control of that lava and manipulate it at will, as if it's an extension of his body. So, another example would be Crocodile during the whole Alabasta arc. That might be the greatest example, due to the fact that since he can turn into sand, he can essentially manipulate all of the desert if he wanted to. Honestly, wanted to go on for another 20 years. I don't want it to end, but all great things must, which is why this upcoming Sunday will be my last review and last reaction to My Hero Academia. All great things must come to an end at some point. At some point. We are not all going to be here forever, and neither is One Piece, but the legacy it leaves behind, yeah, that's going to be forever. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The Yami Yami no Mi is a special Logia fruit unlike others. I really want to talk about this particular fruit. Its darkness transformation is not founded in a naturally occurring element, but rather takes the form of a black smoke that most closely resembles the darkness of a black hole. The user cannot render themselves invulnerable to enemy attacks, as black holes absorb all things that approach it. Instead, the user has the ability to nullify other users' Devil Fruit powers, as they can simply absorb their enemies' abilities. So what makes this a dangerous fruit is not the fact that it's a Logia, but it also can take on the effects of a black hole itself, but also the fact that just by merely touching a Devil Fruit user, it's as if they don't have that power at all. That's not hockey either. That is literally just by physical touch. I only watched the first 3 episodes of One Piece. I haven't read it either, but I do find it interesting listening to Q talk about it. Well, thank you. I like talking about it. So we'll talk about the Yami Yami no Mi as well as the other fruits as well. And the explanation for Logia types isn't like too extensive. It's also, since it's such a rare fruit, there's only 4, 8, 12. There are currently only 12 Logia fruits that are currently active right now. Only 12. Mind you, we've seen like a whole bunch of... If I go back up here, if I go up to Zoans, and then go over to Paramecia types, let's pull up Paramecia types, and let's go down to all the ones that are currently in the series right now. So, a grand total of 89 Paramecia type fruits are in the world of One Piece at the moment. And then if we go to the amount of zoans, there are 38 zoan-type fruits, and that includes all the mythical and the prehistoric ones. And for Logia, there's only 12. Because that's how rare it is, but they are also extremely powerful. So going through each of these users, I can tell you which ones have what fruit. So Smoker, he essentially has the smoke fruit or the plume fruit that allows him to turn into pure smoke. And also a side effect of him having this fruit power is that he could essentially smoke without end. That's the reason why he's a heavy chain smoker. But since he can turn into smoke, the effects of smoke on his body are rendered completely null and void, which means that he's the only character in the entire series that can smoke and will never get any sort of diseases from lung cancer or anything of that nature because of the nicotine and smoke and tobacco. Everyone else, they like to smoke, but they ain't got that sort of advantage. Are you excited for season 2 of the live action next year? Yep. Do you think the live action will skip some arcs and only do the main arcs while still including main plot points to make it shorter? I mean, they kind of did that with the first season, so I don't see why they would kind of stop now. If you're asking me what arcs they're going to skip over, I don't know. But Smoker has the plume fruit, then Crocodile has the sand fruit. That fruit has no need for an explanation. He can create sand, he can create constructs out of sand, but they also share the weakness of sand in being that if you get him wet, like if you get him wet with water, then his powers will not work. Then we have Eneru, who can basically turn into lightning and, manipulate lightning, create it, including millions of volts of lightning, or even turn himself into a giant deity of lightning, even though his powers are not deified in any degree. But he can turn into lightning, with his only main weakness being, of course, hockey users, but mainly it's Luffy, because of his rubber body. Kuzan can turn into ice because he has the power of the ice fruit, or the chili fruit, and his power is vast. And with his power, the fact that this dude is not only as strong as Garp, but he also has a Logia ability that essentially makes it so that him being able to travel across the ocean is not even a concern, because the one way he travels is he essentially, in the past, he used to travel using a bicycle where he would create a trail of ice for him to ride on over the ocean. And even if he were to fall into the ocean, he can just instantly freeze that portion of the ocean and reform himself on top, enabling him to survive being out at sea without an actual ship. Now, since he's part of the Blackbeard Pirates now, he kind of doesn't need to do that anymore, but his powers are vast, and I feel like I should be able to cover every single person's abilities in this listing in one go, simply because, getting through this Logia section is not going to be long because this page is the shortest. Because Paramecia, that was long to read. Zoan, that was long to read. But Logia's easier to deal with. So Kuzan has the power to turn into ice, manipulate ice, create ice. And then we have Blackbeard, who's the only anomaly amongst all Logia users, where other Logia users are capable of turning into their element and creating it and manipulating it, and even allowing attacks to pass through their body. Blackbeard can create darkness, can manipulate darkness, but he cannot turn into darkness. The trade-off is that he can basically nullify the abilities of other Devil Fruit users. And he suffers more damage due to the fact that when he uses those abilities, it actually draws those attacks faster towards him. Like momentum. Things that would normally, harm a regular individual will cause more damage to Blackbeard due to the very nature of his Devil Fruit. So while he can't turn into stuff, he can draw it into him, but it will also put him in harm's way. And it's only because of his insane levels of durability that he has survived everything that has ever hit him, including, getting impaled by spears of fire by Ace, getting cleaved across the chest by Whitebeard and surviving that, have an entire quake bubble erupt around his head that shattered the entire environment around him and Whitebeard during the Marineford War, and of course, getting beaten up by Law for a little bit when he was fighting Law. It's his inhuman levels, insanely inhuman levels of durability that has allowed him to survive being a Logia user that can't actually turn into the element that he produces. Then we have Borsarino, aka Kizaru, one of my favorite characters in the series that has pretty much my favorite Devil Fruit ability in the entire series. He has the power of the Glint Fruit, which allows him to turn into light itself, which he commonly uses to shoot lasers out of his fingers or feet, which also have not only piercing properties, but also have extremely explosive properties as well. His first showcase of this ability was during his first arrival in the Sabaody arc, where he shot a laser into the distance with an explosion that had to be zoomed out from a far distance, that also had the explosive force of uprooting one of the massive mangrove trees that makes up the entirety of Sabaody itself, because all of the land area for the Sabaody archipelago are situated on the big gigantic roots of these gigantic trees. And just one blast from Kizaru completely destroyed and uprooted one from the force of the blow. He can also create, let me see. Here's a quick question before I clock out. Who is the strongest fruit user and non-fruit user? Okay, so the strongest non-fruit user, and I say this posthumously because he's no longer alive, was Roger. Gol D. Roger, the former king of the pirates, because he was able to not only conquer the Grand Line and pretty much walked away from every fight and survived it, and he had absolutely no devil fruit powers whatsoever. He just had strength and hockey. So if I go to non-fruit user, who's the strongest? It would definitely be Roger. And then Garp would be right behind him, and then it would be Whitebeard. We don't know enough about Rox to put him on that list, but he was shown to be like Roger's rival. But for the most part, Roger was the strongest non-fruit user. And for the strongest fruit user, for a time, I want to say it was Whitebeard. Because with his power, the power of the Quake fruit, he was essentially able to create tremors, which has the capacity to, by Sengoku's own words, to destroy the world. Where if he created a quake out at sea, then those quakes would cause tsunamis. And, well, we know how destructive tsunamis can be. And we also know how ridiculous the world of One Piece is. So tsunamis are not something to sneeze at. And he can do this through the air. He can do this on land. And he can do this at sea. He's even tilted the world and caused the seas around the whole area of Marineford where he was fighting to be split and sent into halves, because he basically just grabbed the air and then pulled it, and that caused every area around him in the vast miles of the sea to just upheaval on himself. So if I want to say what is the strongest devil fruit, if we're going by just pure strength and pure power that can reach essentially anywhere, I would have to go with the Quake fruit. It's just that dangerous. Let me see. Let's see, off topic, but do you plan to react to the solo leveling spinoff, Solo Leveling Ragnarok? Yes, I do. However, people have said that, hey, the chapters are out. Yes, the chapters are out in Korea, which have obviously been translated by people over here in the US. I do not intend to read those chapters because I prefer for the official release. I don't do fan scans anymore. I don't do it by people who just translate early. I'm going to wait for the official announcement like, hey, these chapters are being officially translated and it's going to be hitting the US. When they say that, that's when I'll read Solo Leveling Ragnarok. I don't care if those chapters have been early translated or whatever. I'm not reading those. I'm strictly legit now, so I'm just going to wait on them. Bro, that boy broken. Yeah, Roger is broken. The dude was 9 feet tall, dying of an incurable disease, and he was able to clash with Whitebeard evenly. And he and his entire crew fought with Whitebeard one final time for 3 days straight. And he walked away without a scratch on him. The dude and Roger literally said, like, you know what? I'm dying of this disease. I'm going to turn myself in. And his last words is what caused everyone, almost a great bevy of people, to become pirates simply because, like, hey, my treasure. If you want it, you can have it, but you got to find it. And, you know, given the fame of Roger, he was just... everyone just believed him and have been searching for it ever since. Another thing to put you, to let you know just how strong Roger was he was able to fight Kaido. And Kaido, up until his defeat, was regarded as the strongest creature in the world. Whether it was on land, air, or sea, always bet on Kaido to win. He was shown to be pretty much nigh invulnerable, things that he was captured many times as a pirate, and he was set up to be executed, yet every single execution method failed. Spears that were meant to impale him broke on his skin. The guillotine that was meant to chop off his head, that broke. And they tried to hang him, the rope broke. He sunk many warships that were trying to transport him to jail, and he's always escaped. And that's just his own physical capabilities. The dude's main hobby was trying to off himself. And his first appearance was him literally jumping off of a sky island that is 10,000s of feet up, at least roughly, I want to say 10,000 feet up, and tried to plunge face first and off himself. And he survived and got up and said, like, well, I survived again, just holding his head like this is a natural occurrence. Roger is one of the few people that Kaido said, these are the few people who are capable of fighting me evenly, who are capable of putting up a fight with me. And Roger is pretty much the foremost person in that group, along with Shanks and Rocks and Whitebeard and Kozuki Oden, and of course Luffy at that point as well. Now, if we're talking about currently the strongest non-fruit user, I would have to say... it's even between Garp and Shanks. Because Garp is also a person that doesn't have a devil fruit power, and he's the only person from the Marines that was capable of cornering Roger repeatedly during his time as a pirate. Known as a hero of the Marines, and he's ridiculously strong. You'll find out once you see tomorrow night's episode of One Piece, or if you see my reaction to it. You'll understand why he's strong. I'm not going to say it here because you never know if someone who only specifically watches the anime may be tuning in. I'm going to keep that sort of information to myself. But Garp is definitely up there. And Shanks, he's missing an arm, and he's one of the strongest characters in the entire series because of his power. But that's them. But getting back to the Devil Fruit users, Kizaru is also capable of creating constructs, hard constructs out of light, such as a sword, or, well, actually, I need to be careful. No, he's capable of doing a lot of things with light. Some of it are some major story spoilers for Egghead, so I'll keep it to myself just in case. Sakazuki is capable of turning into magma, which is a higher degree than Ace's Flare fruit, which is now in the hands of Sabo after Ace's death. He's capable of manipulating magma. I was about to say manga. I remember you calling President Go Garp. Yes, there's a reason for that. Gotta go? All right, kitty. Thank you for stopping by. I really hope you enjoyed my little TED Talk on Logia-type users in the world of One Piece. You have a fantastic day. Don't work too hard. And make sure you stay hydrated because I feel it's going to be another hot one today, possibly. So please stay careful out there, and I'll catch you in the next one. But his Devil Fruit is on a higher plane than the Flare fruit, as magma can smother fire. It also has not only burning qualities, but it also has massively concussive qualities, as it allowed him to fight evenly with Whitebeard. And if you go by the anime, his powers were capable of clashing with Whitebeard's Quake ability on even terms. And in terms of just pure destructibility, it was capable of destroying Whitebeard's ship, the Moby Dick, due to, his Ryusei Kazan, such as, Meteor Volcano, which essentially allows him to shoot many globs of magma into the air high above the clouds that also comes right back down as enlarged fists of magma that just rains down like an actual meteor shower. It is incredibly destructive, if not the most destructive devil fruit we have seen in the series thus far. It is by far the most destructive that we have ever seen. Let me see. I've seen this debate a lot. Would you say that the Nika Nika fruit has at least a low form of Toon Force and reality manipulation, or no? I think based on feats it does, but a lot of people disagree. I feel it has a low form of Toon Force. It's not even a low form. It's not even a low form. Who's saying it's a low form? It's high form. It's high. Not to the point of like it is in Fire Force near the end of the series, but it does have a form of Toon Force and reality manipulation, such as, Luffy, when he uses his fruit and he gets blasted away by Kaido, he is sent flying a far off distance. So not only is he completely immune to the effects of Kaido's fire, because it just leaves him comically charred, not reality-based charred, but comically charred. He shakes off the charredness and then proceeds to run on the air, which should be physically impossible, and he runs on it in order to get back to Kaido while also setting the very air itself on fire. That is a level of Toon Force and reality manipulation, because for him to be a Zoan type to do that just transcends the laws of physics. One, air can't be set on fire. It's literally oxygen. It doesn't have a basis of which it can burn. So that's already, manipulating reality to a certain degree. Then, when you think of his awakening, he's essentially able to extend this effect to different objects around him. Not just inanimate objects, but people as well. When he was beating up on Kaido during the whole fight of Onigashima, Kaido started exhibiting facial features that were comical, such as when he had his attack thrown back at him, he had like this comic face. And then you have to extend it when Luffy's face came flying down through the hole of the roof of the performance floor. His face was incredibly enlarged and bugged out, and everyone else had that exact same expression, extending to the people around him. So yes, Luffy's Devil Fruit does manipulate reality to a certain degree, and also is capable of exhibiting some aspects of Toon Force, if not a great degree of Toon Force. I mean, I can't say it's a low bit of Toon Force, since that's essentially what Oda made up the Gear 5 state to be, just because he was inspired by Rubber Hose cartoons. And we all know that Rubber Hose cartoons are essentially the type of cartoons that are capable of doing things that are inhumanly possible. Say, for instance, you watched like a black and white Rubber Hose cartoon. How many times have you seen a character literally stay dead after, getting shot up, or maybe they're running from a creature and the creature tries to bite them and they pull their legs up out of the way of the creature trying to bite them, and then the creature's head goes back and then they just lower their body back, even though their legs are stretching to inhuman levels? That's Toon Force, and that's a level of reality manipulation. It's one of the most basic forms, and that's what Luffy has access to. We also got to consider the fact that he essentially can achieve any size he wants. He doesn't need to blow into his limbs in order to enlarge his body to that of a giant. He can literally just grow his size if he wanted to. He can enlarge or toughen up his muscles if he wanted to, just by sheer force of will. He's literally manipulating himself beyond that of what is, defined by the normalcy of reality. So yes, he does. Long story short, too long didn't read. Yes, he does have Toon Force and reality manipulation, because his powers can affect things that are around him. Even the sea itself can come off as feeling like rubbery and shaky. Even the entire island can feel that way during the whole matter that's going on with Egghead right now. So yes, he does. That's how I see it. So then we get to Karasu, and he has the power of the Ash fruit, which allows him to turn, essentially, not ash, but soot. He has the power of soot the soot fruit, what allows him to turn into soot and ash, which is how he's able to, turn his body into a whole bunch of crows, because he can essentially manipulate soot. Soot is a naturally occurring thing because soot naturally occurs after a fire, therefore making it a natural thing that actually exists in the world. It's not man-made. It is literally just something that can happen from another element as well, making it a naturally occurring thing. And he can use it for different effects, such as, weapons, or turning into crows that people can fly on, or as a way for him to communicate to multiple people at once by turning into many soot-covered crows and, flying them all to different types of places. The applications of the soot fruit are actually quite vast when you think about it. Then we get to Caribou, who has the power of the swamp fruit, which allows him to basically turn his entire body into that of a murky marsh swamp. It looks like ooze, like a tannish gray-colored ooze, and he can hide an innumerable amount of things in this, such as food, people that he wants to kidnap, and even treasure if he wanted to. It essentially allows him his own personal pocket dimension of which he can store things and then expel them whenever he wants them. It's not the same as Blackbeard, because whatever gets sucked in by his darkness also gets kind of crushed as well. And whatever gets sucked into that darkness is not left in the exact same state it was after they're let out. Such is the case of the Impel Down guards. When Blackbeard and his crew first showed up, they got sucked into darkness and with Black Hole, and then when he expelled them with Liberation, whatever he absorbed into his darkness was just either torn into pieces, metal and wood framework, and the people he sucked in were just left completely traumatized and scarred all over because of the effects of the darkness it had on their bodies. Whereas Caribou, he can essentially absorb any number of things into what makes him a swamp man, and they'll still be fine, which is how he gets away with like hiding barrels of food or tons of food in his own swamp body, and it just rests in there. One unique thing I have to say about Caribou and the whole aspect of being able to store things within your body is the fact that it really is a pocket dimension, like a pocket space where you can store a potential limitless amount of things. He even attempted to try and kidnap Shirahoshi by absorbing her into his swamp, and he would have been able to hide her in that separate space if he actually got away with it, as was the case when he tried to kidnap many mermaids as well. So that's Caribou, and he can do a lot of things with it, but it's mainly just swamp-based. Then we get to Caesar Clown, who is unique in the fact that he can turn into an actual gas. He can turn into a gas. He's essentially a gas man. He can turn into a gas, he can turn into smoke, mist, and since he, manipulates his own devil fruit by experimentation and whatnot, he can also manipulate the properties as well, such as, he can manipulate the air around him, allowing him to shut off oxygen in the air, rendering people unconscious just instantly, or he can turn into like a poison mist that can render people asleep or even poison them. He can also turn his gas into like a flammable gas, so that if you were to ignite it, it would not only set the entire place on fire, but also have the effects of an airborne explosive, like a thermobaric, if you will. We can look into all of these different fruits, but he's also capable of manipulating his own gas to essentially, travel to different places. He tends to keep a lot of his form gaseous at all times. If you wanted to just, and you can, being an airborne gas allows you the ability to fly, because that's what he can do. Since he's basically an airborne element, he can essentially fly wherever he wants to. So that's an advantage that not a whole bunch of Logia users have access to. Smoker is an example of being able to propel himself in the air using his own Devil Fruit ability, because he's also considered a gaseous Logia as well, like Caesar. What Caesar can turn into smoke, Caesar can turn into gas itself, while Smoker can turn into smoke, both airborne and can, pass through the air. We can look through all these different fruits in a minute. Ravi, it is good to see you, my friend. Hopefully you've been doing good today. So that's Caesar Clown. He can turn into gas. We can look at all of these fruits in a minute. Sabo can turn into fire with the power of the Flare Flare fruit. It once belonged to Porcus D. Ace, but after his death, the devil fruit itself went into recirculation, came under the control and property of Doflamingo, who then tried to put it in the Corrida de Coliseum, and Sabo won and ate that fruit, and it's continuing Ace's will by using his fruit. Now, the thing that we've seen with Sabo using this fruit is that he has just as much control over this fruit as Ace did. But Sabo uses this in combination with his, dragon-style fighting style that he learned from Dragon. So not only is he a Logia user that is very versatile with his devil fruit, but he can also use it in combination with his own particular fighting style and armament hockey as well. So, and the thing is, you don't see too many Logia users turn into their element and also stay hockeyed up. Smoker is an example of that. Sabo is an example of that as well. And I believe Kuzan is an example as well, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So Sabo has basically all the capabilities of Ace, but he also relies on, physically attacking his opponent without using his devil fruit powers, and he's capable of combining it with, his pole arm, his staff training, his bow staff training when he uses like a metal pipe. So that's Sabo. He can turn into fire. Then we have Aramaki, aka Ryokugyu, who has the power of the Woods fruit, which essentially allows him to turn into, trees, nature. Be able to create flowers in his wake when he's walking. Be able to create plants all across his body. This week you will get a thumbnail for 11/22. Aw, Ravi, thank you. My theory on Logia Awakenings is, let me finish talking about Aramaki, then I'll read the comments that you guys have said. He's able to turn into different types of plant life that also have the properties of draining the moisture from whatever he stabs into, which is how he's been able to stave off from eating or drinking anything himself, and he's just been relying on draining things of moisture just by jabbing into it, as is the case when he drained Raizo, when he drained Shinobu, and then drained King and Queen, with Queen getting drained as well, which allowed him to, basically supply himself with moisture and sustain his own well-being. He can also create plants out of his body that allows him to fly over distances, such as creating a plant on his back, a flower on his back that also works as a propeller, allowing him to fly across different environments as well. And he's capable, like every other Logia user, of reforming his body after it's been injured. However, he also suffers from the same type of weaknesses that all Devil Fruit users suffer from, which is those who have superior haki. In one instance, and I want to say the greatest instance of haki overcoming that of the capabilities of a Logia user, was when Ryokugyu was trying to take out the Akazaya 9 in order to kill Luffy. And Shanks' conquerors traveled from miles out of the country of Wano and hit Ryokugyu, who was in his Logia state. And Shanks' conquerors, his haki was so strong that it forced Ryokugyu to leave his Logia state. Now, mind you, this is different from users having their entire tangibility just nullified from the point of impact, as we've seen with Rayleigh or anybody else that can use haki, especially with armament. This is unique in the fact that Conquerors was strong enough to induce a Logia user to leave their transformed state out of sheer force of will. So Kaido was not kidding when he said only haki can transcend all. It even has the capabilities of making it so that Logia users who are already transformed are forced back into their natural state, natural human state, with no way of turning back because the haki is affecting them that powerfully. So that's Aramaki. And then, of course, we have the deceased and the non-canon. Porcus D. Ace, he was the person who had the Flare Flare fruit previously. And Monet, who has a lesser version of Kuzan's fruit, which essentially allows her to turn into snow, and snow itself. She's able to turn herself into like a gigantic, feathery, winged snow monster. She's also capable of creating blizzards in a certain area, filling an entire area with snow in which she can hide and surprise attack people. And She's capable of imbuing her body with that of ice-like properties, but not to the degree of Kuzan, in the ways of if she were to bite into a person, they would suffer immediate frostbite and have like a chunk of their body bitten out. So that's a dangerous ability. However, its capabilities pale in comparison to that of Kuzan, since Kuzan is capable of just outright freezing people. And those are all of the canon devil fruits we have. Of course, we have Honey Queen and Simon and Gaspard, who have different types of Logia fruits, but they're considered non-canon. So, Logia types. Moku Moku no Mi allows the user to create, control, and transform into smoke. I know I just went through this for everybody, but I'm going down this list. Suna Suna no Mi. English version, Sand Sand Fruit. Allows the user to create, control, and transform into sand. The sand can dehydrate any non-metallic substance it touches. This crocodile can literally grab a person and drain them of moisture. Meta Meta no Mi. English versions, Flame Flame or Flare Flare Fruit. Allows the user to create, control, and transform into fire. Eaten by Portcullis D. Ace until his death and later eaten by Sabo. The Goro Goro no Mi. English version, Rumble Rumble Fruit. Allows the user to create, control, and transform into lightning, eaten by Eneru. Let me see. My theory on Logia awakenings is that they are the rarest form of awakening because of how powerful and hard to control they are and permanently change the environment in which they are awakened. See, it's funny that you should say that, Shonen Sensei, because I've had that thought. I keep doing this. I had that thought process when I was taking a shower, talking about the potentials of Logia awakenings. And I have to agree with you. The capabilities of a Logia awakening has never been witnessed, but it has been theorized. And due to the fact that Punk Hazard is left as a frozen wasteland permanently on one side, and a burning, fiery inferno on the other, with no hopes of either side overcoming the other, they're just permanently that way. One of the most well-accepted theories is that this is the result of Kuzan and Akainu awakening their devil fruits and permanently changing the environment and landscape of an entire island to the point where one side will always be snowy and cold, and one side will always be hot and burning and melting, and no force on Earth will ever change that. So that's been a long-standing theory. Because ain't no way you're going to tell me that for all the fighting that Akainu and Kuzan did in order for them to become the new fleet admiral, you can't tell me that they only fought in a small area. It's a whole island. Punk Hazard is big. Punk Hazard is massive. And their fight permanently changed the landscape. So you can't tell me that that's not awakening. And if it isn't, that might be the most dangerous showcase of a Logia Devil Fruit ability that we may have ever seen. But I'm still leaning in the direction of, like, it's an awakening, but we just haven't seen a Logia awakening yet. And I feel that when we do, it might be one of the scariest displays of powers that we've ever seen. Because for a Logia user to go beyond creating, controlling, and transforming into an element, what happens when a Logia awakening goes beyond those three parameters? What happens when it starts affecting the area around them? Does it start turning the area into that element, as we've talked about before? And, like, say for instance, Kizaru were to awaken his devil fruit. Will the entire area around him just suddenly turn into light that he can manipulate at will? There's so many things to consider about a potential Logia devil fruit awakening. So then we have the Hiei Hiei no Mi, English versions Chili Chili or Ice Ice Fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into ice, eaten by Kuzan. Then we have the Yami Yami no Mi, English version Dark Dark Fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into darkness. The darkness has strong gravitational properties, and the user has an infinite amount of space inside of their elemental body, eaten by Marshall D. Teach. Pika Pika no Mi, my favorite devil fruit, English version Glint Glint Fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into light, eaten by Boru Sarino. The Magu Magu no Mi, English version Mag Mag Fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into magma. It ranks amongst the greatest attack power out of all devil fruits due to its just massive destructive potential. It is one of the strongest devil fruits out there. on par with the Quake fruit. Crazy, isn't it? Eaten by Sakazuki. Susu no Mi. Soot fruit allows the user to create, control, and transform into soot, eaten by Karasu. And then we have the Numa no Mi, allows the user to create, control, and transform into mud. The user is a bottomless swamp, granting them an infinite amount of space inside their elemental bodies. The mud can also take on the properties of quicksand, eaten by caribou. Gasu no Mi, English version, gas fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into gas, eaten by Caesar Clown. The Yuki no Mi, English version, snow fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into snow, eaten by Monet until her death. And with her death, the snow fruit has gone back into circulation and has not been seen since. And then lastly, the Mori no Mi, English version, woods fruit, allows the user to create, control, and transform into flora, trees, forests, flowers. If it's a plant, he can basically turn into it. The user can become what is described to be a living forest. So think of this the first Hokage with his deep forest emergence as if the forest itself was a living person and it could create more forests. He's essentially the living version of the first Hokage's wood-style jutsu, but, you know, it's a person. Eaten by Aramaki. Then, of course, you have the non-canon versions, but we're not too worried about those. Strengths! I'm gonna read these as well. Logia fruits are considered to be the strongest among the 3 basic devil fruit types, with the most powerful paramecia, the Gura no Mi, being compared to a Logia in terms of potency. Think about that for a second. The Gura no Mi, the Quake fruit, is compared to the Logia in terms of its own attack power, not the other way around. Logias are the top tier when it comes to power of all devil fruits in One Piece, with the Gura no Mi of a Paramecia class being like, yeah, this is the only one that's closest to it in terms of just raw power. So, for those of you that may have thought like, oh no, the Gura no Mi is the most powerful devil fruit there is out there, just remember that the Quake fruit has been compared to the Logia fruits in terms of its power pretty much matching theirs. That's the tier to reach to, and the Gura no Mi is the closest to that. As Logia's let me see here. The aftermath of Punk Hazard being a prime example of this after Aokiji versus Kuzan. Aokiji versus Akainu. Shonen Sensei, I really hope we see a Logia awakening soon. I would love to see a Logia awakening. Just the pure power of it all. The strongest devil fruits in the world? I would love to see an awakening. I imagine Kizaru's awakening turns everything into kind of like how Neo saw the world in the Matrix Revolutions. Just everything is lights. See, that's the tricky thing about thinking about Logia awakenings. How can they affect the world, but not to the degree where it goes into levels of ridiculousness? That's the tricky part I have when it comes to thinking about the capabilities of Logia awakenings. That's the tricky part that I have. As Logias grant the ability to create near endless amounts of an element and thus control forces of nature, just about every Logia user has immense offensive and destructive power at their disposal, akin to a concentrated natural disaster. Ooh, I love them spitting facts! Fire and magma transformations can instantly burn opponents. Lightning can electrocute opponents with a single hit, and light can blind opponents and pierce through them like lasers. The Gasu no Mi can create a large variety of gases, many of which are toxic or explosive and can cause instant death. Literally robbing the air out of your lungs is one aspect of this. It is also capable of removing oxygen from the air. The user of the Hie no Mi can flash freeze people, who, if they are not carefully thought out, could wind up suffering permanent damage to their body, just as the case with Diamond Jozu, where he lost an arm because Kuzan froze it, and he fell on his arm, shattering it into pieces. And now Diamond Jozu is one-armed Diamond Jozu now. And with that, people are capable of being shattered into pieces if they're not thought out, as would have been the case with Robin had they not rescued her before Kuzan decided to try and step on her during his first encounter with the Straw Hat crew. While the Yuki Yuki no Mi user can give people hypothermia by surrounding them in snow. So you can see the various degrees of power here. The chili fruit can just straight up freeze people, while the snow fruit can give people hypothermia. Hypothermia is a survivable state, whereas flash freezing, while it's also survivable, the chances of you getting out of that situation on your own are slim to none. People who get caught in the swamp made by the Numa Numa no Mi will be trapped in it. The user of the Mori Mori no Mi can effectively turn into a forest of deadly flora, and the darkness of the Yami Yami no Mi can pull in any object and crush it to smithereens, as is the case of the town on Bonaro Island. I want to say I'm pronouncing that name correctly. On Bonaro Island, where Ace fought Blackbeard, he crushed an entire town into pieces, and then expelled it, in the entire area where Ace and Blackbeard were fighting was just filled with the rubble of an entire town. Let me see here. Considering oxygen is a gas, I have to say that Gas no Mi has the potential to be so broken. If Caesar was competent enough to use it to its fullest potential, because it's a dangerous power. The ability to literally rob the air of oxygen to the point where when you see people falling down all around you, they mistake it for conquerors, as if like, oh no, he's using conquerors to knock everybody else out. Oxygen is essential for everyone. You need it to live. So imagine being Caesar, but you have the mental fortitude of someone like a Kainu or Doflamingo, and using your power to its highest extent, to its most finite degrees, to the utter tier of perfection. Being able to rob oxygen from the very air itself is broken. The only reason why Caesar isn't smart enough to do something like that on a grand scale is because he's a conceited little jerk that thinks that, well, I'm the smartest scientist in the world, no one can beat me, and he gets beaten by people because he underestimates them. He's smart in terms of being a scientist, but he's an idiot when it comes to fighting, because when things don't go his way, he gets desperate, and he loses control, and he's not focused, and that's what allowed him to get beaten by Luffy. But if it was in the hand of a person who was steel-minded, can you imagine Rob Lucci as a Logia? See, he's already dangerous being a Zoan type, and he's awakened that Zoan type. He's already fundamentally one of the most dangerous individuals in all of One Piece. But can you imagine Rob Lucci being a Logia user, and he still carries that whole moniker of Dark Justice? Luffy wouldn't have been able to beat him. Because that was before he even learned what Haki was. We should count our blessings that Rob Lucci wasn't a Logia user. Because if that was a version of Lucci that Luffy had to face down during Enies Lobby, everybody would have been dead. Because no one knows Haki at that point. Everyone would have died. That might be the reason why Oda hasn't given any of the CP agents, any Logia Devil Fruit abilities. They've always been physical based that has that limitation of not being able to turn intangible. That might be the reason. That might be the reason they don't have any Logia users in their ranks. In addition to their potency against opponents in a fight, the elements that Logia users transform into can also have a significant effect on their surrounding environment, from the land and water around them to even the climate. This was notably seen on Punk Hazard, where it wasn't 3 days, it was 10 days. 10 days! Sorry, where did I get 3 days from? Oh wait, I was thinking of 3 days from Roger and Whitebeard. 10 days is how long Kuzan and Akainu fought against each other on Punk Hazard. This was notably seen on Punk Hazard, where a 10-day battle between Magu Magu no Mi user Sakazuki and Hie Hie no Mi user Kuzan caused half of the island to become a hot, fiery land, and the other half to become a cold, snowy land. Additionally, Crocodile was able to use the Suna Suna no Mi to create massive sandstorms in the desert country of Arabasta, or Alabasta. And Kuzan can travel across the ocean by freezing it. The ability of Logia users to merge with their element means that certain locations make particular Logia users stronger, such as the desert for the Sunasuna no Mi user, and gaseous environments for the Gasugasu no Mi user. If Logia users are given enough time, their attacks can impact and even destroy areas on an unprecedented scale. Thus, most Logia-type users are capable of unleashing powerful and large-scale attacks rivaled by few. Notable examples of Logia users' mass destruction capabilities include Blackbeard pulling an entire town inside him with the Yami Yami no Mi, as well as Eneru completely obliterating Angel Island and planning to obliterate all of Skypiea with the Goro Goro no Mi. Just to be sure, Chapter 441. Is it Banaro? Yeah, Banaro Island! Banaro Island! Banaro Island! Yep, I was right with my lettering for it. Defensively, the intangibility of Logia users, when transformed, makes them extremely difficult, if not impossible, to harm, let alone defeat. The Gasugasu no Mi literally end the war before it starts, have it awaken and just zero oxygen for Marijois. See, Logia, this is the reason why Logia users haven't been shown to do awakenings, because everything they can do now is pretty much busted. What you mean we got a Logia user that can manipulate the air, can make it toxic, can manipulate the very air itself, fill an entire room with toxic gas, or just rob an entire room or entire area of air, rendering people unconscious for lack of oxygen to the brain. This is just one fruit that does this. So imagine them ever getting awakened. They would fundamentally be... I mean, they're already busted now. They're the highest tier of power when it comes to devil fruits in the world of One Piece. So just imagine them reaching that higher level of power. It's ridiculous. They're already ridiculous, but just trying to imagine them on a much higher plane than that's already a lot. Defensively, the intangibility of Logia users when transformed makes them extremely difficult, if not possible, to harm, let alone defeat. Unless you have Haki, and that is the only way you can affect them. Unless one has learned Armament Haki, a skill which is not common outside the New World, or has managed to acquire an element to cancel out a Logia user's power, it is near impossible to injure a Logia user. And one person has figured out a way to be resistant to Haki during his Logia state, and it's Akainu. And we still don't know how he's so defensive and how he's able to resist, because Haki quintessentially should be able to not only nullify a Logia user's intangibility, but also allow that person to be harmed by the Haki in the process. But when Akainu during the Marineford War was slashed in the neck, which should leave a mark, especially when it's Haki, when he gets slashed in the neck by Marco and Vista at the same time, he says, Haki users are so annoying, and then just kept going. This is our first instance of a Logia user suffering an attack while in their Logia state that were Haki imbued, and it did not stop him or affect him. So how he learned to be resistant to Haki is still unknown, but it's scary because if Akainu can do it, then that means that other Logia users are capable of learning that as well. And I feel a Logia user who is capable of making themselves resistant to Haki, the one true way for their powers to be nullified. If that person is capable of learning a defense against Haki users, that is a person to be scared of. And mind you, Akainu is a person to be scared of. As much as people hate him, his power is by far one of the most destructive, if not the most destructive that we've seen, aside from the Goro Goro no Mi. So, Logia user being intangible. You can't touch him while he's in his lava state because it's lava. You don't touch lava. No one in their right mind would ever touch lava willingly, because you are literally just offering up your hand to be forever changed by the passage of time. You are sacrificing whatever limb gets touched by it. But not only can he be intangible, he's had his entire body blown apart by explosions, and then, just Terminator his way through it and just walked while reforming his entire body. Now you show him being resistant to Haki, the one true weakness of Logia users aside from falling into the ocean that people who can use Haki are capable of exhibiting. That's a scary thought. A Logia user that's resistant to Haki. That's scary. But let me get back to it. Unless one has learned armament Haki, a skill which is not common outside the New World, or has managed to acquire an element to cancel out a Logia user's power, it is near impossible to injure a Logia user. The Sumegeri guards of Alabasta, who had no knowledge of armament Haki, were at a loss for how to injure Crocodile, with the only options they could think of being the consumption of hero water to grow physically stronger, which in no way impacted his sand intangibility. If we just hit him harder, then we'll harm him. No, that's not how Logias work. On Skypiea, Eneru was able to toy with Kamakiri for 5 minutes by doing nothing but sitting and transforming to render the warrior's constant attacks useless. And we all know what happened to Kamakiri after those 5 minutes were up. It didn't last very long. Fully transforming their body into an element gives Logia users several advantages. One of those being the ability to disguise themselves by becoming part of their environment. Additionally, fully transformed users are capable of freely manipulating their body's shape at will. Karasu uses his ability to divide up his body into a murder of crows made of compressed soot. These birds carry Karasu's consciousness, seeing as they are made from his body, and can serve various tasks such as attacking or disarming enemies, and outside of combat by, for instance, receiving and relaying information or transporting objects or people. As shown by Kuzan and Monet, skilled Logia users can utilize this ability to morph their elemental bodies out of the way of attacks that would actually physically damage them, even to the point of opening full-fledged holes in their own body so that their enemies' attack would just pass harmlessly through empty air. Charlotte Katakuri, whose fruit is classified as a paramecia, but has the same abilities as a Logia, has perfected this skill with observation Haki to foresee opponents' attacks and transform parts of his body into mochi to shift out of the way accordingly. Additionally, Logia users can use their element to aid their physical body, such as when Eneru used his lightning to jumpstart his stopped heart. Overpowered. Users who transform into elements that are lighter than air are capable of flight by transforming the lower half of their body. Logia users have also used their abilities to power machines and objects with their elements. This has been seen with Smoker using smoke to power his Billower bike, Ace using fire to power his Striker raft, Eneru using lightning to power the Arc Maxim, and Caesar Clown feeding gas into a sword hilt to create a flaming sword. Weaknesses. Despite the fearsome power of Logia users, they are not invincible. Overconfident Logia users who rely too much on their ability to avoid damage are often swiftly defeated when they encounter someone who can counter their abilities. This was the case... Hold on, let me see. If it isn't armament Haki, how do you think Green Bull overcame his natural weakness to fire? We'll look into Automaki's Devil Fruit here in a moment. We'll come back to this in a moment. Actually, you know what? Let's go to it now. Let's go to his fruit now. So, strength and weaknesses. So, yeah. Here's the thing. While the fruit's power has an obvious weakness to fire, the user can train and adapt themselves against this fault by making their wooden body fireproof. He made his body fireproof. That said, the user is still vulnerable to powerful enough fire techniques that can instantly incinerate their body. Aside from that, the user displays all the general weaknesses common to devil fruits. So, another aspect of Logias is that that power can be trained so that even if it does have a weakness, it has a way of overcoming it. And the only instance we see of this is Akainu with his resistance to Haki, and Adamaki, Ryokugyu, with his woods fruit that enabled him to, after training it, make it so that him turning into wood, he can basically make himself fireproof. Fireproof wood. Yo, what's going on? Psycho. Also, isn't today supposed to be Eric's birthday? I think today is supposed to be Eric's birthday. Let's see, sup everyone. I can only stay for a little while. I'll be celebrating my mom's birthday. Well, happy birthday to your mom, Psycho. Happy birthday to her. That's so nice. My mom's birthday is going to be this month as well, and it's going to be exactly 2 days before the release of Black Myth Wukong. So, yes, lots of birthdays in August. Let me come back to this. Overconfident Logia users who rely too much on their ability to avoid damage are often swiftly defeated when they encounter someone who can counter their abilities. Areas like the New World are full of experienced fighters who know a lot about Devil Fruit abilities and how to fight them. The most common way to bypass Logia protections is by using Armament Haki. Haki does not prevent Logia users from transforming or completely deactivate the transformation. Rather, once a Haki-imbued object makes contact with a transformed body part, the body part that is struck reverts to its solid form. Thus, a Logia user, pardon me, still got the breakfast burps, the Logia user that is hit with a Haki-imbued attack in their transformed state will be harmed as if they had not transformed. Such properties also apply to Logias being grabbed by a user of armament, best exemplified by Caesar being unable to shake off from Luffy's hold on him, forcing the former to forcefully attempt to strike back instead of simply splitting away and reforming. Being in a transformed state may cause a user to expand and occupy a larger surface area than their normal body would, allowing Haki-wielding opponents to strike and injure them with greater ease. As such is the case with Caesar when he enlarged his body using Land of Death, and that caused Luffy to hit him over a far greater degree because he enlarged his body. And that caused more harm to him. Please wish your mom a happy birthday from all of us. Yes, wish your mother a happy birthday from everyone in the Continuum. Additionally, Logia users may lose their intangibility when their bodies come into contact with an element that has a special reaction to their element. When struck by said element, they are affected in the same way as when they are hit by Armament Haki. For example, if the sand fruit user comes into contact with a liquid, the sand will stick together or harden, thus forcing the user into a tangible state. Another example is when two Logia users clash and one element is naturally superior to the other, as seen when Akainu used his magma to injure Ace's fire body, which is seen during the Marineford War. Alternatively, two Logia elements may completely stalemate upon clashing, such as fire and smoke. Other examples of elements being used to cancel out a Logia user's power were when Monkey D. Luffy bypassed Crocodile Sand by coating his body with water, and later, blood. As well as when Luffy bypassed Enoru's lightning with just his body due to being made of rubber. Logia users may still be able to outlast and overpower opponents who can bypass their intangibility through intelligent use of their ability, like, for example, Crocodile using his dehydrating powers to directly absorb water attacks, or Aramaki turning his wooden body fireproof, and they may also use Haki to protect themselves. Nonetheless, being able to bypass intangibility significantly improves a person's chances when fighting Logia users, and they may be able to take the Logia user off guard, especially if the user is overconfident in their ability. Such is the case of Caribou and Caesar. They would pretty much thought in their minds, hey, no one can touch me because I'm a Logia user. Then people who can use Haki surprise them and just body them completely. Yo, CX Muru, what's going on? Hopefully your day has been great. Let me see here. It is possible to trap a transformed Logia user in an enclosed space, especially if their element is solid, and rendered it difficult to impossible for them to escape. This was seen when the Straw Hat Pirates caught Caribou inside a barrel and bolted it shut, preventing it from escaping until someone else opened it later. Luffy attempted to defeat Crocodile by eating his transformed head and torso, which did disrupt the Warlord, although he was able to quickly burst out. Users with solid and rigid elemental transformations, such as ice, are slower to reform when their elemental bodies are attacked and damaged, because in Kuzan's case, ice doesn't just flow and ebb in order for it to fully form back. It literally has to crack and reform back into place, and that takes us longer amount of time than someone other than, a Kainu or Kizaru reforming themselves. A Logia user may be unable to effectively perform and utilize their transformation if they are overwhelmed by an emotion, such as fear. This was seen with Monet, who was gripped with fear after Zoro bisected her without Haki and was unable to reform her body for a short time. She was so terrified of Zoro, realizing that him splitting her apart put so much fear into her that she couldn't even reform herself after being separated, because all she could think about is like, he could have killed me at any time, but he didn't. And that fear caused her to be unable to control her own transformation. So now we get to the trivia part, and then we'll be done. Every canon Logia comes from a natural element, but some shown in non-canon media do come from man-made substances, which is why they're non-canon, because all the canon Logia, they're all naturally occurring. Except for Eneru, every canon Logia user that was revealed before the time skip was present during the Summit War of Marineford. Treble utilizes his Paramecia ability, the Beta no Mi, to create a thick coat of mucus over his slim and frail body to trick his opponents into thinking he has a Logia ability. And then right here, in the manga release of chapter 863, the Mochi Mochi no Mi was stated to be a Logia, but this has been changed in the volume release into a special Paramecia. Katakuri was originally meant to have the powers of the Kona Kona no Mi, a Logia devil fruit that allows him to turn into flower. However, considering that flower is a man-made substance and not a natural resource, this ability may have also been reclassified as special Paramecia. The Marines currently hold the largest known number of Logia fruit users in a single organization. 4 users: Smoker, Kizaru, Akainu, and Adamaki. Additionally, they also had Kuzan before he resigned and Caesar Clown before he was dismissed. Despite Vegapunk's best efforts, Logia is the only type of devil fruits he failed to artificially replicate due to their complexity. Thus far, Logia is the only devil fruit category with no known awakened users, and the function of the category's awakenings is unknown. These are the properties of Logia users. So out of all the devil fruits that we get in One Piece, these are some of the most overpowered and some of the most unique fruits in the entire world of One Piece. So, let's go down and go through a couple of them. How long have I been live for? It's only been an hour? Yeah, we got time. So let's pull up Smoker's Fruit. We'll go through these. So, Smoker's Fruit, actually, wrong list. Yeah, here we go. We'll just go this way. The Smoke Fruit, or the Plume Fruit. Strength and weaknesses. The user of this fruit is able to generate, manipulate, and become smoke. Like with most other Logia fruits, when Smoker is hit, he can simply use the fruit's power to become smoke, thus absorbing the attack and remaining unharmed. Like some of the other Logia-type devil fruits, it allows its user to fly by turning his body or the lower part of it into smoke, greatly enhancing his movement and speed. The main offensive capabilities of the fruit stem from its user's ability to change the density of the smoke produced at will. This allows Smoker to surround his targets with his intangible smoke and then solidify it to grasp them. This power has granted Smoker his epithet, the White Hunter. The smoke can also be used as a blunt weapon, hitting enemies with great power. However, it is possible to escape the smoke's hold with a sudden strong enough expansion of the body, such as Luffy's Gum Gum Balloon. It would seem that when confronted by fire, they will cancel out one another due to being the same temperature. Other than that, no special natural weakness has yet to be seen. With his current mastery over his powers, the only reliable way to injure Smoker is through the use of Haki, as Hancock did during their short battle, or through the standard Devil Fruit weaknesses. It has been noted by many targets of this power that the created smoke is quite foul, to the point of causing people to cough. However, Smoker has so far not been seen exploiting its debilitating effects on other people's respiration. So that's its strength and weaknesses. Then, of course, we go to its usage. Smoker has mainly used the smoke produced by his fruit to capture his opponents, earning him the epithet White Hunter. He can manipulate the smoke's density to make it thick or thin, allowing him to hold and constrict others within it. Like many Logia users, he can fly by turning his lower body into smoke and propelling himself like a rocket. By the time he participated in the Summit War of Marineford, Smoker has mastered this Devil Fruit to the point of perfection and can turn into smoke reflexively if attacked, as is the case with this image here. Where he gets slashed by someone from behind, and he just instantly turns into smoke. Smoker has shown higher understanding and skill of the basic mechanics of his Logia abilities than most other characters in One Piece, able to selectively transform and manipulate his normal and smoke body parts in tandem to catch enemies by surprise. One of his more common battle tactics is to turn into smoke, spread it over a wide area, then suddenly manifest his human body parts from the smoke to attack from unexpected angles. On one occasion, when facing Law, Smoker was able to fake his own death while turned into smoke after being impaled by a rock, only to manifest his human legs out of his transformed smoke body to surprise attack the Warlord. Another common tactic of Smoker's is to transform his limbs into smoke, but not his hands, enabling him to strike opponents with his sea stone tipped Jite from a much greater range. Or to launch himself Jite first at his opponents like a rocket by transforming his lower body into smoke. Post-time skip, Smoker still employs these same tactics, but with the addition of hardened punches to his portfolio as well. He's added being able to armor up with Haki while in a Logia state in order to enhance the overall Arcan power. Smoker has also been shown to power the engine of his motorbike, the Billower bike, with his smoke powers, allowing ground travel. And then, of course, it lists all of his capabilities that he can do. And this is also the first Logia fruit shown in the entire series. So that's the Moku Moku no Mi. Then we go to the Suna Suna no Mi. Strengths and weakness of the Sand fruit. The fruit's power allows its user to transform their body into sand, as well as create and control sand in large quantities. Once transformed into their element, the user can let physical attacks, without armament Haki, and non-sea stone projectiles pass through their body to prevent harm, like most Logias, or fly by morphing their lower body into jets of flowing sand, offering them a massive advantage in defense and mobility amidst combat or pursuit. Creating sand also grants the user various offensive capabilities. The user can create blades of sand in multiple shapes and sizes, large sandstorms that can travel great distances, and even vortexes that trap their opponents and pull them underground. These techniques are further strengthened in power and range in a desert setting, where sand is abundant and can blend itself with the user's own sand to increase the scope of attacks. Besides basic elemental control, the fruit exhibits a unique ancillary ability, namely liquid absorption, allowing the user to dehydrate anything they touch and even extend said effect to their immediate surroundings, drying up vast areas of land like a drought. This ability is usually life-threatening to any living organism, causing plants, animals, or people to suffer from dehydration, as well as turning mineral matter into more sand particles for the user to manipulate. Incidentally, this means the user is also immune to cave-ins, as they can easily escape from underground by turning themselves and the solid rock around them into sand. Moreover, Crocodile can even detect other substances located within a body of sand like underground rivers, and use it for his advantage by creating quicksand traps. The Suna Suna no Mi is one of few Logia-type fruits that can naturally counteract their own weakness. This fruit's power becomes stronger in desertic areas where water is near absent. Weaknesses! The main weakness of this Logia power is exposure to liquids. Specifically, the user's sand turns solid when in contact with liquids such as water or blood. This prevents the sand from dispersing and thus temporarily nullifies the user's intangibility, per the concept of damp sand sticking together due to surface tension. However, this aspect of the fruit's power seems inconsistent regarding the type of liquid used and how it makes contact with the user. Crocodile was bitten by a water-drenched Luffy but sustained no harm from either the water or Luffy's saliva. One occasion also had him turning into sand when Vivi attacked him, even though he had been drinking wine moments before, indicating that exposure needs to be external to interfere with his transformation. Other than that, the user is also affected by the standard devil fruit weaknesses. So now we get to the usage. Crocodile claims to have mastered the sand fruit to the point of perfection, being able to transform his sand into a variety of weapon-like forms and turn into sand whenever attacked. Because of that latter reason, Crocodile rarely fears anyone who has no actual means to injure him, frequently calling their efforts futile as he simply lets them try as much as they can. Any theories as to why Blackbeard doesn't have the usual tangible ability of other Logias? Well, I think it has something to do with the. I think it's well. Look, you know what? I'm gonna bring this up when we talk about the Yami Yami no Mi, because I'm gonna be covering. I'm covering all of the Logia Devil Fruits and reading their abilities and weaknesses and usages. I'll talk more about it once we get to Blackbeard's fruit. How far away is that? Ah, it's not far. We just got to go to the Flare Flare fruit, the Rumble Rumble fruit, and the Chili Chili fruit. Then we'll get to the Yami Yami no Mi. I'll bring this question up again once we get to that, because I really want to talk about it. Where was I? Crocodile once stated to be invincible as long as he fights in the desert, something that further motivated him to conquer the Alabasta Kingdom, taking advantage of the local environment to establish himself as a nearly unopposable force. Moreover, Crocodile conspired to suppress any other potential sources of water that could be used against him, secretly drying local villages and towns through his sandstorms while utilizing the forbidden dance powder to concentrate all of the country's rain in a single place to the detriment of the rest of the country. All of this allowed Crocodile to eventually control a significant portion of Alabasta's water, causing national unrest that eventually devolved into a civil war that benefited his plans of conquest. Crocodile makes great use of his gold alloy hook in conjunction with his powers. Being one of his main forms of melee combat as he transforms into sand, approaches his opponent and then quickly reforms himself to swing his hook at them. In addition, Crocodile has been shown to turn his arm into flowing sand in order to extend the reach of his hook, as a method for long-range capture and striking. Crocodile, however, seemingly cannot manifest the dehydrating effect of the fruit through his hook, specifically stating that only his regular right hand is capable of such feat. And then, of course, we have all the capabilities of Crocodile and what he can do. Long list here. So now we move on to the Flare Flare fruit. Strengths and weaknesses. The fruit's major strength, like other Logia types, is that it allows the user to produce as well as become the element they control. In this case, the user is able to create, control, and become fire. With this in mind, the user can create devastating fire-based attacks and gain a high resistance towards most heat-based attacks. The flames can also be used to increase the force of physical attacks. By turning into fire, the user is capable of letting enemy attacks harmlessly pass through their fiery body or move around quickly in a stream of fire. Igniting oneself seemingly has the added effect of burning an opponent if they had tried to physically harm the user. When their powers clashes against certain other Logia on equal grounds, this seems to come to a stalemate. Neither smoke nor ice was able to overcome or succumb to the flames, instead canceling each other out when the two elements collided. The Meta Meta no Mi is inferior to the Magu Magu no Mi in terms of elemental hierarchy. Magma is considerably hotter than fire, allowing it to overwhelm the Meta Meta no Mi's powers. The magma can neutralize even the intangibility and heat immunity of the Meta Meta no Mi. thus leading the user to be burned and completely vulnerable. If the magma strikes through the body of the user, it cannot be phased through like most other attacks, and the damage inflicted will remain as with any normal person's body. Other than that, the user is also affected by the standard Devil Fruit weakness, as we come to learn during Akainu's attempts at killing Luffy and wind up killing Ace in the process. Usage! The fruit's bestowed powers as used by Ace has been used in a variety of ways. Since he left home 3 years before Luffy, who did not know that Ace had powers before their reunion in Alabasta, Ace had his powers for no more than 3 years. Ace notably used his powers usually either to fight or to propel his raft. Ace names his attacks in Japanese, and they are often made of two-worded phrases. According to Gats, Ace had sunk countless battleships and burned down mighty cities with the fruit's power. During Ace's cover story, the power of the fruit allowed Ace to rescue a marine officer and some documents on board a burning ship. Despite being weakened by the Yami Yami no Mi severely during his fight against Blackbeard, Ace was still able to skillfully use the fruit's power to inflict some damage onto his former subordinate. And of course, we have the different types of abilities that Ace has used. Heat Fist, Fire Fist. Well, it's Heat Fist in the 4Kids dub, but Fire Fist, Fire Gun, Fire Pillar, Firefly, Fiery Doll, St. Elmo's Fire, Crossfire, Great Flam Commandment, Flame Emperor, Flame Mirror. And then we have Sabo as well. After Sabo had eaten the fruit, he has been shown being able to utilize it effectively mere seconds after consuming it. Although struggling to control his new powers at first, he adapted to it. And Sabo has displayed great control over this fruit's abilities, being able to utilize it in conjunction with his pipe and avoid injury by making himself intangible. Like Ace, Sabo names the techniques in Japanese, though Sabo's naming style follows more of his affinity with dragons. Sabo has been shown using it to enhance the already immense destructive power of his claws, allowing him to overwhelm powerful foes such as Jesus Burgess. And we've seen the capabilities that Sabo has showed with this fruit, because like I said, he's capable of using this fruit he's not using it just exclusively fire-based as Ace once did, which kind of led to him getting beaten by Blackbeard because Ace has only ever known using his own fire powers and not actually using physical attacks to harm his opponents, because the intangibility of a Logia fruit can make one cocky and make them think that, oh, you can't touch me at all, I'll just turn into fire and I'll just hit you from a distance. But when he came across Blackbeard, Blackbeard said, nah, nullification, beat you into the ground. And that's kind of what led to Ace's defeat. Sabo, however, already knows hand-to-hand combat, and using that in combination with his own Devil Fruit makes him effectively a better fighter than Ace, because he's not just solely relying on his own Devil Fruit power to get through fights, he has actual combat training. And we see all the techniques that he's done, including ones that'll happen in the future. I'm gonna leave that one alone. And that's the capabilities and usage of the Flare Fruit. So now we go to the Goro Goro no Mi, the Rumble Fruit. Strengths! This is probably going to be a little bit of a long one. Oh yeah, it's gonna be a little bit of a long one, but I'm ready for it. Strengths! A holder of this Logia power can create, control, and transform into electricity, effectively becoming lightning incarnate. They can discharge varying amounts of electricity from their body to manipulate as they please, including regulate the voltage. 200 million volts being the maximum output, roughly in the range of natural lightning. You don't want to get hit by natural lightning. Not everyone survives. Given the sheer destructive power that is inherent to lightning, this ability seems remarkably strong even by Logia standards and grants overwhelming attack power, as well as high speed and versatility. Nico Robin has mentioned that amongst the many existing Devil Fruits, this Logia is one of the few powers considered invincible. By physically morphing into electricity, the ability user becomes intangible and can let attacks, save those involving Haki or Sea Stone, phase through them harmlessly. Enemies are dissuaded from striking the user directly with their body or a conductive weapon, lest they be electrocuted, thus affording a melee combat advantage. By transforming fully, the user can move at the speed of lightning, allowing them to zip out of sight, into and out of sight, cross large distances nigh instantaneously, dodge most attacks, and overtake any fleeing target. Merging their lightning self with conductive materials, e.g., gold, to stealthily travel through them becomes also possible for the user, as does traversing thunderclouds in the sky. On top of that, the Goro Goro no Mi user, being wholly immune to electricity, can freely spawn it inside their body without repercussion. They can even restart their own heart with electricity in case they suffer cardiac arrest. The Goro Goro no Mi user poses a great threat up close, seeing as they can electrically shock and burn people on contact. But their electrocuting potential is not limited to close range, as they can conjure up vast amounts of electricity to launch as long-range blasts or send through conductive surfaces like clouds, striking far off targets. These attacks can be shapeless masses of lightning, focused or spread out, sent directly at opposition along a forward path, or made to crash down from above like natural lightning. Alternatively, the electricity can be given more distinct shapes like animals. Beside lightning, the user may also produce thunderclaps by superheating the air, making it expand at the speed of sound. Should the Goro Goro no Mi user gain access to naturally or unnaturally formed thunderclouds in their vicinity, as an Enoru had with the storm cloud spewed forth by his flying arc, they can dramatically boost their ability's range, to the point of showering entire islands with countless lightning bolts, or creating enormous dense cloud balls laden with so much electricity they can destroy islands on which they are dropped. Traveling through such storm clouds is likewise possible. The abilities granted by this fruit also extend to other electric phenomena. The user can, for instance, use electric heat to melt metal on contact, then reshape it to their liking, as seen with Eneru reforging his gold staff into a heat-exuding trident, or when he temporarily liquefied and took control of his flying arc's gold plating to entrap his foe therein. Additionally, by combining his lightning powers with mantra, observation haki, Eneru learned to read electric waves from the air across great distances to gain a constant radar-like sense of everything happening around him on a massive scale, letting him know the exact locations, actions, and conversations of anyone present on Skypiea at any time when concentrating, while massively expanding his attack range. Lastly, powering machinery that runs on electricity, whether a massive flying arc or robotic entities, is also made possible for the ability user. Almost there. Weaknesses. While extremely powerful, the Goro Goro no Mi's ability has a unique weakness in the form of rubber, which is an effective insulator. Thus, whoever ate the Gomu Gomu no Mi becomes the natural enemy of and counters whoever wields this Logia power, as the former's body is completely rubber-made. All of Eneru's lightning attacks were shown to have absolutely no effect on Monkey D. Luffy, even ones with voltages as high as 100 or 200 million. In addition, all of Luffy's physical blows that struck Eneru completely bypassed the latter's intangibility, successfully hurting him even without haki. If other insulators have the same, if any, effect on Eneru's Logia form is unknown. Automata are also unharmed by Eneru's lightning. In fact, being robots, lightning recharges them. Moreover, another lightning manipulator, like Nami with her climb attack, can potentially deflect some of this Logia user's attacks, altering their lightning path, although Eneru noted that Nami would be unable to do so if he upped the voltage. Otherwise, this fruit user suffers the same standard Devil Fruit weaknesses, like losing their powers if submerged in water or contacting sea stone, and armament haki negating their intangibility. Usage. During his 6-year tenure as God of Skypiea, Eneru with his powers would mete out his so-called divine punishment to whoever went against his declared laws or merely spoke ill of him, disclosed his secrets, and etc., leaving especially the Angel Island denizens in constant and abject fear of his anger. Eneru did so by using his high-level mantra in conjunction with his ability to read electric signals from afar, which made his sphere of perception span the whole country. Thus, he gained a radar-like awareness of all the happenings in Skypiea while extending his attack range massively. Eneru would surveil Skypeans and listen in on what they were saying so that, should he hear disparaging conversations, he could immediately send down giant lightning blasts to smite the concerning parties from on high, his residence at God's shrine. Alternatively, Eneru would take notice of when people spoke his name and then personally confront them for it. In face-to-face combat, Eneru's powers are shown to make him extremely formidable. None of those he came to fight on Skypiea knew how to handle his Logia powers, with only Wiper, before Luffy, managing to hurt Eneru once by catching him unawares with Sea Stone. Eneru's high speed when transformed into lightning, coupled with his premonitive mantra, allows him to outmaneuver most opponents, move into their blind spots, evade incoming attacks, and catch up to fleeing targets all without discernible effort. He can even merge with and thus traverse electrically conductive materials like gold, as well as move through thunderclouds. I feel like an announcer speaking all this stuff out. I like it. Perhaps most impressive, however, is Eneru's ability to recover from being sent into cardiac arrest. Should an attack be made on him that stops his heart, he can simply shock it back to normal. Most of Eneru's offensive moves aim at dispatching adversaries by making overwhelming amounts of electricity pass through their bodies at once, usually knocking them out and inflicting severe burns. Most of Eneru's seen attacks, both at short and long range, sufficed to instantly defeat whomever they struck, with Eneru unaccustomed to enemies who can withstand more than one or two of his blasts. For some techniques of his, particularly those forming animals out of electricity, Eneru uses the taiko drums on his shoulders as a medium, tapping them with his golden staff and making them glow before a given lightning creature appears from them to assail Eneru's foe. Against the rubber-bodied Luffy, who proved utterly immune to electric shocking, Eneru instead opted to use his gold staff in melee, infusing his weapon with electricity to reforge it into a sharp trident that exuded electrical heat to both slice and burn his foe, as well as using the gold integrated into the Arc Maxim to encase one of Luffy's arm in a massive gold sphere, permanently hampering the boy's movements. When using the thunderclouds generated by the Maxim as a medium, Eneru could dramatically increase the range and scale of his lightning, creating exceedingly destructive attacks, namely his Mamaragan and Raigo, that could ravage and destroy entire islands. His ultimate move is shown to involve transforming his body into a gigantic version of itself made of pure lightning, his Amaru form, to maximally increase the strength and voltage behind his attacks. A non-combat use of Eneru's lightning resides in his powering of machines, primarily his flying arc that has been engineered to run on electricity as a main power source, the gold from Shendor's ruins built into the ship to conduct his lightning. Ultimately, Eneru achieved his goal of reaching Fairy Verth, the moon, on this colossal ship. Once on the moon, Eneru was able to channel his lightning to awaken an army of automata, robots kept in a dormant state, by charging up the machinery by holding them across the ruins of Burka. And that is, the usage and strengths and weaknesses of the Rumble fruit. And we have all these different degrees of what he can do. 1 million volt Vari, 20 million volt Vari, 100 million volt Vari, max 200 million volt Vari. Sango, Shinzo Massage, which he used in order to bring himself back. 30 million volt Vari, 60 million volt Vari, Gloam Paddling, Death Pia, Mamaragan, Raigo, 200 million volt Vari, Amaru. We've seen these and plus different types of attacks that he used in One Piece Power Warriors 3. But that is the Rumble fruit. We got the Chili or Ice fruit, and then we got the Yami no Mi. And how many more do we have after this? We still got a few. I'll cover them all. Chili fruit, strength and weaknesses. Yeah, this won't take long. Strengths and weaknesses. As a Logia, this fruit allows its user to transform into the element of ice, as well as create and control it on a potentially massive scale, especially to freeze their surroundings. Particularly potent even by Logia standards, with this power running for a 10-day battle, it was strong enough to permanently warp the very climate of one half of an island into a frozen, uninhabitable wasteland. The Hiei no Mi's power is considered a superior counterpoint to the Yuki no Mi's ice, ice being a superior freezing agent to snow, because snow melts quicker than ice. With this devil fruit's power also being able to replicate snowing as in the case of Punk Hazard. While other Logia fruits give their user the ability to dissipate out of harm's way by turning into their respective elements, it is interesting to note that this fruit is one of the few Logia fruits that can be hit with a physical attack. This is mainly because ice is a solid state element, and thus the user cannot simply dissolve out of harm's way as most Logia users can with their fluid bodies, and it is slower in terms of reforming the body when damaged. However, most attacks are still ineffective against this fruit because the user can simply shatter and reform the ice composing them on impact. As I explained when I was explaining Kuzan's capabilities of reforming himself during the Marineford War, like the biggest example of this is when he gets shattered after being impaled by Whitebeard. He gets shattered to a whole bunch of pieces thanks to, Diamond Jozu's brilliant punk! And he falls into the ocean down below underneath Whitebeard's ship. But then his body immediately starts freezing the water underneath him, and he just crackles and reforms right out of it. So that's how he can do that. Let's see. And is slower in terms of reforming the body when damaged. However, most attacks are still ineffective against this fruit because the user can simply shatter and reform the ice composing them on impact. It is also apparent that the user can control the ice in their body to mold it and change its shape, as seen when Kuzan formed a hole in his chest before Whitebeard stabbed through Kuzan with his Basento, allowing Kuzan to avoid contact with the Haki-infused weapon. The user can instantly freeze anything that comes in contact with them, whether the user grabs onto the foe or the foe makes contact with the user's body. If the frozen area is not treated properly and immediately, then the resultant frostbitten areas will suffer permanent tissue damage. That's when I explained when we went through his fruit and the whole state of him being able to flash freeze someone. And if they're not thawed out properly, then the frostbite will be permanent. If a body is frozen entirely, the victim can survive for a certain period of time and can be saved if thawed out carefully, but will be left in a very brittle form that will result in instant death if shattered. In order to thaw properly, the victim's body must generate heat internally by putting low temperature water onto it continuously until defrosting. Sorry. Nose got a little stuffy. And then massage the frozen area. If external heat is applied, it will cause the frozen tissues to crack. Though it has not been shown, both Blackbeard and Garp have asked Kuzan to unfreeze their subordinates after he attacked them, implying that the user can manually undo the effects of the Devil Fruit. Kuzan has resistance towards cold due to his Devil Fruit's element being able to move around in cold environments with barely any protection. The ice seems to cancel out with fire when they clash, as seen against Porcus D. Ace's Meta no Mi. However, the ice seems to be ineffective against Whitebeard's earthquake abilities, since the freezing powers against the Emperor failed due to the ice shattering before disabling the target. The vibrations from the Goro no Mi also shattered the ice and kept Whitebeard from being frozen solid, because you can't freeze vibrations. In addition, Akainu's magma abilities were able to melt the ice generated by Kuzan in seconds. However, it should be noted that Kuzan was able to fight against Akainu on equal terms for 10 days straight. Kuzan is able to travel great distances and move at high speeds by turning his entire body to ice, as seen when he moved from his seat on the execution platform into the air to freeze 2 tsunamis created by Whitebeard. Most of this Devil Fruit's attacks require Kuzan to be in physical contact with his opponent directly to freeze them, yet Kuzan has found ways to extend his combat range, such as creating ice spears or ice tridents. Like Ice Broku, Parutizan. Its freezing ability can also be seemingly countered if the target has sufficiently strong enough Conqueror's Haki and the ability to defend themselves with it, as seen when Garp's Haki prevented Kuzan from successfully freezing him completely. Other than that, the user is also vulnerable to the standard Devil Fruit weaknesses. However, the fruit's power over ice is one of the few known powers that allows the user to counteract the standard devil fruit weakness of falling into water, as they can simply freeze the liquid and create a surface to stand on, thus preventing sinking and drowning. Usage! The main usage of this fruit's power, as demonstrated by Kuzan, is for combat. With the immense power over ice, Kuzan can create ice weaponry to create ice weaponry or freeze his opponents with physical contact. Kuzan can create enough ice to freeze a giant, a sea beast, and convert a mass amount of seawater into a gigantic ice sheet within mere moments. He was even able to freeze 2 tsunamis, giant enough to dwarf the Marineford fortress, brought upon a seaquake from Whitebeard's Guraguro no Mi. His main style of combat is to use his... I thought I heard something just now. His main style of combat is to use his ice powers to disable and immobilize enemies, freezing their bodies solid just by touching them, and threatening to shatter their fragile forms, whether by touching them directly or with extensions of ice pillars. His other main style is to create weapons of ice to spear his opponents to compensate his otherwise necessary direct contact. He can also use ice to cause discomfort to his opponents. Another usage of his ice that Kuzan demonstrated is for transportation across the ocean. He either freezes a large portion of the ocean for other people to walk across, creates lines of ice on the water to serve as guidance for boats, or creates a narrow track of ice for him to ride over with his bicycle, the Aochari. Kuzan is one of the few devil fruit users who has shown to adapt his powers for traveling over the sea. After losing his left leg to Sakazuki in their battle for the position of Fleet Admiral, Kuzan used his fruit's power to create a prosthetic leg out of ice. This means that even if broken, Kuzan can regenerate his prosthetic anytime thanks to his abilities. And of course, we have all these different abilities that he can do: create swords out of ice, can entirely freeze a person's body, creating spears out of ice, locking people in ice, creating, creatures out of ice itself. And then of course we got the non-canon stuff that comes from like the video games and such. If you play One Piece Pirate Warriors 3 or 4, then you know that Kuzan can, create ice and, use Ice Age and freeze an entire area around him. He's very fun to use. I might boot that up once I'm done here. But now we move on to the Yami Yami no Mi, so I can focus on Shonen Sensei's question. Strengths and weaknesses! And the usage, this won't take me as long to get through either. Strengths and weaknesses. The first and foremost strength, as demonstrated by Blackbeard, is that it allows the user to control darkness and its unique property of gravity. The darkness is visually demonstrated by a black smoke-like substance spreading out from the user's body. The darkness is a void that devours and crushes everything. Due to this, the user can absorb physical matter and attacks of any type by sucking it into the darkness. The user can also use this ability to irresistibly pull the opponent to them, regardless of their current state. Similar to a black hole, the user can absorb things into a vortex. It seems that it does not completely compress and annihilate that which is sucked in as an actual black hole would, but rather creates some form of space where things are stored. Blackbeard was able to suck an entire town into himself, and when he eventually regurgitated, everything that was expelled was reduced to scraps, but not completely destroyed. Living beings who are absorbed seem to be able to survive being absorbed and expelled, but become heavily wounded and left in shock by the experience. In addition to the previous abilities, this fruit somehow has one unique and frightening ability that separates it from all other devil fruits. You might as well say that this is a Logia fruit that has a supernatural ability attached to it. The ability to absorb and completely nullify the powers of other devil fruit users by simply touching them. All types, be it Paramecia, Zoan, or Logia, can be negated through contact, though Logias are the most affected as they can no longer become intangible by transforming into their respective element. Unlike Seawater and Sea Stone being only able to prevent devil fruit users from properly controlling their powers, and Armament Hockey users being only able to bypass the defensive aspects, such as a Logia's intangibility, the Yami Yami no Mi's nullification of devil fruit ability seems to be truly absolute. as if the Devil Fruit users had never gained their powers in the first place. This was shown when Luffy's stretching powers were completely cancelled on touch, allowing Blackbeard to injure the Rubber Man simply by throwing him to the ground, while it was later shown earlier when Luffy was struck underwater that his neck could still be stretched above the water surface. This is after Luffy jabbed his feet into the ground in order to swing around, that giant sea cow creature. But Arlong picked up that entire chunk that Luffy was stuck in and threw him underwater. And then Nojiko and Genzo pretty much pulled his neck out of the water and he could still stretch. He can't swim in water, but that doesn't mean his body can't still stretch by outside forces. Blackbeard touches you, it's as if you don't even have the power at all. Let me see. And that the armament Haki can allow blunt attacks such as Garp's punches and a flick from Rayleigh's finger to cause him pain, despite still being rubber. This essentially makes the user a natural enemy to all other Devil Fruit users. With all of the above, this makes the Yami Yami no Mi one of the more powerful and dangerous Devil Fruits of all. Any theories as to why Blackbeard doesn't have the usual intangibility other than Logia's? Simply because of this ability. Because if he was able, because think about it, it would simply, the reason why he doesn't, I honestly feel like the reason why he doesn't have the ability to turn intangible is because he truly would be invincible with this additional ability on top of it. So, for Oda, I feel like the good quid pro quo for this type of fruit, for this type of Logia, is he loses the ability to turn intangible like a normal element, but he gains the ability to just straight up nullify Devil Fruit powers completely and absolutely. Because if he could have this ability to nullify Devil Fruit powers and be able to turn intangible, not only would people not be able to injure him or touch him at all, but he could just nullify Devil Fruit powers without any counter unless the person knows, like, armament Haki. So, honestly, that's the reason why I feel like he doesn't have the ability to just turn intangible. Because he would be one of the most, if not the most overpowered Logia user in all of One Piece. Because he'll just let things just pass straight through him and just continue on. And no one would be able to touch him. But if he touches you, you ain't got no powers anymore. So I feel that's the reason. Simply because him having the ability to go intangible and this special ability of nullifying Devil Fruit powers would just make him way too overpowered. With all the above, this makes the Yami Yami no Mi one of the most powerful and dangerous Devil Fruits of all. Weaknesses! The major strengths of this particular fruit, the darkness that the user turns into, which swallows up everything, is also its major weakness. Since the darkness also absorbs attack, the user of this fruit is still vulnerable in battle, which does not pass through the darkness they turn into. If they fail to absorb an attack in time, the user can be hurt like any other normal human being, or even more so, as stated by Teach. Unlike other Logia fruits, the Yami Yami no Mi does not seem to give Blackbeard access to an elemental state where he can disperse, reform, or regenerate his body. While the fruit's ability to nullify Devil Fruit abilities is very powerful, it does not seem to be perfect. The user must actually touch and remain in contact with the victim for the effects to remain constant, meaning that if the victim is separated from the user's physical touch, they will quickly regain their Devil Fruit abilities. However, it seems this power can be overcome in certain situations. It appears that if the Devil Fruit nullification aspect of the fruit requires a conscious activation of the user, Whitebeard managed to activate his powers despite having his hand wrapped around Blackbeard's neck, with the latter noticeably being too pain-stricken at the time after receiving a slash wound from the Emperor earlier. It is also possible that Blackbeard is required to touch the other user with his hands, and his hands only, in order to nullify their abilities, as with the case of other hand-activated Devil Fruits. However, it seems that touching bare skin is not required, as Blackbeard was capable of nullifying Luffy's powers and Impel Down by touching his clothes, overall suggesting that his hand must be touching the person or material on the person for it to work. If the opponent is strong enough to break his grip without the aid of their Devil Fruit, they will regain their respective Devil Fruit powers. Other than that, the user is also affected by the standard Devil Fruit weaknesses. Uses! The fruit's bestowed powers, as used by Teach, have been used so far for mostly combative purposes. With it, he was able to defeat Ace, his former commander, in battle, despite Ace possessing the extremely powerful Meta-Meta-no-Mi. Blackbeard has two main methods of usage of this fruit's power. The first is to spread his darkness throughout the ground, entrapping his targets and everything else within the vicinity, and then absorb them into the darkness with extreme crushing force, and finally, regurgitating the remaining debris with equal force. The second is the focus of the Devil Fruit nullification aspect, to which he combines with the gravity attraction force, pulling in his long-range targets into his grasp. Against other Devil Fruit users, this technique is particularly fatal, as getting caught by Teach means he is free to follow up with a powerful punch or even a finishing blow, ignoring whatever Devil Fruit-based defenses they may have. While Blackbeard is forced to deal with even more damage than usual due to the fruit's drawback, his sheer durability and tolerance for pain seem to make up for it. Because anyone with less durability than Blackbeard probably wouldn't last too long using the Yami Yami no Mi. When Blackbeard took the Gura Gura no Mi from Whitebeard's corpse via an unknown method, he claimed that with the power of darkness that reduces anything to nothingness, combined with the power of quakes, which brings destruction to all, he was truly invincible and the strongest. It is currently unknown if this was achieved through the Yami Yami no Mi or through other means, but people will stake their life on theories that it was the Yami Yami no Mi that enabled him to do all these sort of things. So how many more we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, we're making good time. How many did we just go through? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, making good time. Let's keep it going. Pika Pika no Mi! Strength and weaknesses. Like with all other users of Logia Devil Fruits, just a big warning if I hadn't said so already. Yeah, I may be touching on some spoiler warnings, so if you are an anime-only viewer of One Piece, it may be best for you to turn away. Right now, it may be best. Like with all other users of Logia Devil Fruits, the user of this fruit is able to control, create, and transform into an element. In this case, Borsalino is able to control, create, and transform into the element of light. As such, the user is able to utilize light-based attacks, including shooting laser beams from their hands, fingers, feet, or even eyes, which are capable of causing massive explosions. Gotta go clock in, my friend. Enjoy the stream very much. Do you plan to do similar streams for Paramecias and Zoans? Shonen Sensei, I've already done those. This is my last day of doing like a deep dive into Devil Fruits. I did Paramecia 2 weeks ago, and then I did Zoan last week. I'm doing Logia for the last time this week, so I already got like 2 other ones. Fair warning, my Paramecia one wasn't as extensive as my Zoan and my Logia one because I forgot that there was a whole different tier at the bottom of the page when I was reading, so apologize if that doesn't seem as complete, but I've already done the 2 previous Devil Fruit categories from the previous 2 weeks. So if you want to watch those or listen to those later on, those are available to you. Let's see. As such, the user is able to utilize light-based attacks, including shooting laser beams from their hands, fingers, feet, or even eyes, which are capable of causing massive explosions. Summoning light flashes to blind opponents and undergoing partial transformations into light itself that enable physical attacks that connect at light speed, which can cause devastating damage. My nose is starting to itch a little bit. Must be coming into some money soon, or is that when your hand is itching? You know, the old folk superstitions. The user, like any Logia, is able to transform into light to let incoming attacks pass right through them. The user is also able to travel at the speed of light, form hard light constructs, create or split into shining particles for locomotion, regeneration, or even multiplication, and reflect themselves between surfaces at any desired location. Notably, the user's body becomes so lightweight that they become capable of standing over something as small and fast-moving as a cannonball in mid-launch or float in mid-air for a few instants. That said, they can still accelerate into extreme speeds to transfer massive weight and momentum into physical moves. Speed is weight. Right before they make contact with the intended target. In addition, any application of light, whether in technology or weapon, is useless against the user's body, as they can simply bypass anything that is comprised of a laser or light system. Since this fruit is light-based, some of the user's attacks like lasers can only travel in straight lines. Strangely enough, it seems the lasers themselves can be dissipated with a strong enough defense, which is so far a feat that only one person so far has been seen to achieve. Sanji, who outright kicks it apart at close range, and when asked how he did so, chalked it up to the power of love. From Borsalino's flabbergasted reaction, it can be inferred that the laser he fires rarely fail. It is subject to the standard devil fruit weakness. The moment this happened, that's when we knew that Sanji was just built different. And when Kizaru was straight up like, Kizaru does not get like straight up surprise. So to see that one of his light beams that has been shown always being able to pierce through anything he wants, get completely not only blocked, but also destroyed right in front of his eyes at point blank range? Sanji built different. Usage! Borsalino has so far been shown using this fruit to travel at the speed of light, to the point of stating that Monkey D. Luffy in his Gear 2nd mode was too slow, and to also drastically augment his kick's strength and speed. Even though he travels in light speed when mobile, it should be noted that it takes a few seconds for him to actually go into light speed, as Silver's Rayleigh was able to stop his movement by slashing at him with his Haki-imbued sword, and Borsalino had to stop to counter him. Borsalino has been seen using his fruit's power to launch powerful light energy beam attacks at high speeds from his legs that can cause tremendous explosions. Really wish One Piece Pirate Warriors 4 made it so that his explosions were even bigger. If we get a Pirate Warriors 5, I would very much like for them to just amp up the massive attacks, the scale of just like basic attacks for characters in One Piece. Then again, I wouldn't mind us getting... Oh my goodness! Shonen Sensei with the super chat! You are my friend! My friend, thank you! Saying, always a pleasure watching your content. See you next time, buddy. God bless. God bless you too, Shonen Sensei. Let me go ahead and leave a reply while it's still fresh, because I can do that. I can only do it from mobile, though. It won't let me do it here if I did it on my laptop. So there you go. A reply right there. I like the fact that they enable you to be able to do that. That's nice. That's nice. But if we ever get like another Pirate Warriors, I really hope they amp up the area of effect and also basically increase. I really want them to make it next gen exclusive, so that way they can amp up how many opponents you can have on screen, but also make it smooth at the exact same time. When shot from the fingers, the beams take on a piercing effect instead. He can blind and stun his opponents by emitting a large but quick burst of light from his fingers, similar to a flash grenade. He can also form a beam sword out of pure light, capable of slashing and hurting even Haki-immune enemies. Borsalino's Devil Fruit was further researched by Dr. Vegapunk, who technologically recreated his laser blast in the pacifist of Bartholomew Kuma and his likeness. The succeeding Seraphim units are also outfitted with this weapon. He also incorporated this technology for his lab's defense, the Frontier Dome. This technology was also used by two other individuals. Frankie installed this into his cyborg body while rebuilding himself on Karakuri Island, in which he projects the beam when he places both his hands together, and Queen installed this into his mouth, in which he could project the beam while transformed into his full Brachiosaurus form. And of course, we have the capabilities, the named capabilities of Kizaru in the ways of the Yatano Kagami, the Amaro Murakumo, the Amaterasu, which is only named in the manga, but it's an attack he uses, and of course, the Yasakani no Magatama. So those are the capabilities of the Pika Pika no Mi. Moving on to the Magu Magu no Mi, which is, one of my favorites to read. The Magu Magu no Mi. I need to put a new screen protector over my phone, because my phone dropped the other day and my screen protector cracked. The screen itself is fine, but screen protector cracked, so I gotta replace that soon. The Magu Magu no Mi. Strengths, even when compared to the standard Logia, which are powerful in their own right, the Magu Magu no Mi possesses incredible power, particularly in terms of offense. The main strength of this devil fruit is that it allows the user to become, control, and produce magma, molten rock, to attack their opponents with. The intense heat can vaporize an iceberg instantly, and boil seawater that the magma happens to land in. Additionally, the heat from the magma melts away almost any flesh or metal it comes in contact with, and is capable of burning away entire parts of a human body, such as the entire portion of Whitebeard's head that he pretty much carved away at. Literally carved off a portion of his head, and in the anime, they kind of only had like his mustache get burned off, but they also left like giant gaping holes, gaping, burning, and seared, cauterized holes in like Whitebeard's body during the anime. But it's incredibly destructive, and is capable of burning away entire parts of a human body, leaving the victim in a scarred or disfigured shape. With this power running for a 10-day battle, it was strong enough to permanently change the weather of one half of an island into a blazing inferno. As a Logia, it can let physical attacks such as punches and slashes harmlessly pass through the user unless they are imbued with Haki. But in Kainu's case, he's learned of how to essentially be resistant to Haki while in a Logia state, which shouldn't be possible, but he's figured out a way. Still don't know. Because of the fruit's natural element, if one were to attempt to strike the user with their own body, they would end up seriously injured or burned. Weapons, such as swords, were also shown to melt after coming into contact with a Kainu. This fruit's ability is naturally of a higher order than the fire-manipulating Metameronomy, with the magma produced able to consume the opposing flames and neutralize the fire-based tangibility, harming the user. The Magomagonomy has one of the highest offensive power amongst the devil fruits, and its strength is powerful enough to take on people like Emporio Ivankov and Jinbei with minimal effort. The magma is hot enough to melt even a pacifista armoring. Weakness. Aside from the standard devil fruit weaknesses, the powers do not seem to be weak against anything specific. In fact, the only things that the Magomagonomy could not burn were the flames produced by Marco's mythical Zoan fruit. However, in the anime, Sakazuki was still able to push Marco aside in order to reach Luffy with another burst of magma, Vista's swords, Shanks' saber, and Whitebeard's Basento. Additionally, despite having abilities naturally vulnerable to the fruit's power, Aokiji was able to deal grievous injuries to the other admiral during their 10-day duel. If we ever learn the entire specifics of what happened between that duel, I feel the world will implode. Other ways the user can be hurt include if the user is touching Sea Stone, being caught off guard, assuming they are not trained to transform reflexively, and being attacked by the fruit's elemental weakness, though no such weakness has been canonically revealed so far. Like any devil fruit, armament Haki can bypass its intangibility. However, Sakazuki demonstrated some degree of resistance toward Haki-powered attacks, as both Marco and Vista failed to bypass his body's elementality. So far, only Whitebeard was successful in injuring him with Haki. Other than that, the user is affected by standard devil fruit weaknesses. And then we get down to the usage. And Akainu's usage of the Magomagonomy is really, really simplistic. Just overwhelming force. It really doesn't need to be accurate. It doesn't need to be precise. It just needs to be aimed in the direction of the person he wants to kill, and the power will just handle the rest. Sakazuki's signature method of offense is to transform his fist into magma and expand it with a forward motion, usually in the form of a punch. In the anime, it is also shown that Sakazuki can launch his magma fists much like a rocket punch. Just by forming an attack, the heat coming off his body has been shown to melt enemy weapons around him. I thought I said that wrong. Has been shown to melt enemy weapons around him. You know, you have those brief moments where you gotta double check your grammar just to make sure you said something right. Sakazuki has been shown to be repeatedly pierce through the has been shown to repeatedly pierce through the bodies of his adversaries with ease using his power, and was responsible for the complete destruction of the Moby Dick as a side effect of using a single one of his techniques. Along with the incredible corrosion and temperatures, the magma-based attacks also carry highly explosive properties. One attack is enough to cause an explosion capable of inflicting tremendous damage throughout the entire battlefield. In the anime, this devil fruit also carries concussive force great enough to allow Sakazuki, at one point to clash with Whitebeard's Quake-imbued fist. When it comes to transport, Sakazuki can move at extremely high speeds by launching himself like an actual volcano blast towards his opponent, and can even melt solid earth and rock to make tunnels to move through the underground. And then, of course, we have the different attacks that he has. Daifunka, Great Eruption, Ryusei Kazan, Meteor Volcano, Inugami Guren, Hound Blaze, Meigo, which is Hellhound, which is essentially one of Akaino's most dangerous capabilities, where he just turns his hand into magma and then just with extreme force just completely obliterates and caves off whatever gets hit by it. Just even by a glancing blow, this was enough to take off a part of Whitebeard's entire face. Whereas in the anime, he uses this attack, hits it into a person's torso, and then just implodes the person's inside with magma and just blows their body up from the inside. Only strong people like Whitebeard were capable of keeping their bodies still together, but he was heavily damaged afterwards. That's the Mago Mago no Mi. Then we move on to the Susu no Mi. Like I said, this is going to be dealing with This is going to be dealing with some stuff that is kind of revealed a little bit later in the story, so if you don't want to deal with any spoilers, I understand if you gotta leave, but I'm just giving you a forewarning. Strengths and weaknesses. This fruit's ability is to create, control, and become the natural element of soot, a fine black powder composed mainly of carbon, resulting from the incomplete combustion of organic matter, wood, coal, etc. When transformed into the substance, the user becomes intangible like most Logia users, and invulnerable to physical means of attack, such as gunfire, while at the same time being able to float in midair thanks to the soot's lightness. By condensing the soot making up their body, or that they additionally create, into a semi-solid state, the user may mold it into any shape they wish, on top of scattering their body into separate pieces while retaining conscious control over each individual one. No weakness of this ability are known apart from the standard ones for devil fruits in general and Logia types in particular, such as armament, hockey, and sea stone. Usage! Karasu's go-to method of using his powers is to divide up his body into a murder of crows made of highly compressed soot. In this divided state, he can fly at high speeds, relay information, e.g. by delivering newspapers, or generally communicate by speaking and listening through individual crows. On top of carrying objects or even allies with him through the air, a single crow being able to carry an average-sized person on its back. It is shown that, in this way, the crows can operate a significant distance away from Karasu's main body and be summoned from soot that allies carry with them. In combat, Karasu is able to disarm a multitude of enemies by snatching away their weapons with the crows faster than they can react, as well as attack by having them fly into and peck enemies in rapid flocking assaults. Apart from crows, Karasu may condense the soot into other formations, such as tall spikes that shoot up from the ground. And of course, we have the different ways that he can use his capabilities, but that goes into heavy spoiler territory, so I'm gonna stop right there. But that's the power of the Soot fruit. Then we move on to the Numa Numa no Mi. Strengths and weaknesses. And it's really short. For Caribou, it's very short. Strengths and weaknesses. With the Numa no Mi, Caribou can create bottomless swamps which are impossible to escape from. If someone is caught by the swamp created by Caribou, they will sink more if they struggle. The swamp also serves as a storage space, allowing Caribou to store an infinite amount of whatever he has captured inside his body. The storage space can also be used to help carry a large surplus of food, which remains edible over long periods of time. Sorry, I had trouble swallowing there. With Caribou noting that he has a month's worth of rations stored within himself. He is able to keep several weapons within himself and bring them out when he needs them. While he can keep creatures alive when they are in his swamp, he can also use the swamp to drown his opponents if he wishes to. Like most of the other Logia users, Caribou cannot be hit or sliced as his element is intangible, and any attacks will be absorbed into his body harmlessly. Though more like Marshall D. Teach, Caribou cannot allow the attacks to phase through his body. Instead, it must be absorbed. The thick liquid produced by this fruit's power is mud, which is a half water, half earth element found near bogs, with Frankie even describing it as mud-like. The major weakness of this fruit is that the user cannot transform back to their normal form if they are confined into a space that their normal body cannot fit in. Due to this weakness, Frankie was able to capture and seal caribou in a barrel easily. Also, this fruit has yet to demonstrate offensive capabilities other than drowning opponents in the swamp. Also, since his mud is just basically earth that is mixed with water, this leaves him vulnerable to individuals who can manipulate water, such as Jinbei. Other than that, the user is affected by the standard devil fruit weakness. Usage! With his devil fruit powers, Caribou can create bottomless swamps by turning his lower body into a swamp. Via this transformation, he can capture living beings like he did when he used his powers to capture some mermaids. Should his target prove to be too large to be captured by normal means, Caribou can expand his body to increase the surface area and wrap around the target in question to drag them in faster, as he did with Shirahoshi. His bottomless swamp can also be used as a storage space. In fact, his fighting style consists of storing several weapons like Gatling guns and scythes inside his body. He can also hide people inside his body for stealth purposes. Caribou can also use it to choke his opponent by encasing their head in a sphere of swamp. Like other Logia users, he can evade, or in his case, absorb attacks by turning his body into the related element, which is, in this case, swamp. However, his over-reliance on this defense, which he incorrectly believed to be invincible, led him to have little natural defensive power when his ability was dampened by attacks imbued with armament haki. By staying as his mobile swamp form, Caribou gains impressive stealth attributes, allowing him to sneak away or approach unnoticed, and eavesdrop on conversations by sticking to obscure or hard-to-see places so that he can listen in on conversations. He can also extend parts of his body, such as his ear, to aid him in his eavesdropping. This ability also aided in his kidnapping spree, either by laying a trap on the ground to swallow the mermaids, or simply absorbing them directly into his body upon meeting them should he not have the element of surprise on his side. And that's the capabilities of Caribou. But of course, he's one of those individuals that sees his devil fruit as like invincible, and quickly got shut down by someone who said like, yeah, you rely on your devil fruit power too much. Now we move on to the Gasu Gasu no Mi. We are almost done with just 2 more after this, and then I'll say my final words about Logia types, and then we'll be done with this entire session, and thus we'll be done with my little mini-series of diving into the specifics of devil fruits in the world of One Piece. To the Gasu Gasu no Mi, the Gas fruit. Strengths and weaknesses. This one won't be long either. This devil fruit's main strength is the ability to change into a gas-like form, allowing the user to float, fly, and go inside places that normal beings cannot, as Caesar Clown was seen hiding inside some flask when he was informed that the Marines were nearby. However, they can also become dense enough to hold objects. Pardon me. The gas that the user produces can be modified to be poisonous. The gas appears to be explosive when set alight, which allows controlled explosions. Additionally, the user has the power to manipulate other pre-existing gases in any given location, and can suffocate their opponents by removing the oxygen in the area. Once again, like Shonen Sensei said earlier before he left, the ability to manipulate oxygen and rob a person the ability to breathe, that's kind of broken. Because I've never met a single person that can keep going after losing all the oxygen in their lungs, unless they were literally a godlike being from like Marvel Comics or different series where they don't need to breathe in order to live. There is no person in One Piece that can pretty much do that. So yeah, it's kind of busted for his power. It's just a shame it's in the hand of a scientist who just doesn't believe in. Hold on. Sorry, family walked in. Apparently, Denim threw up his food a little bit, so we're gonna watch him a little bit more for a little bit. Interesting. Hmm. Yeah. So we gotta find out what the cause of for that was, so that he can be better taken care of in the future. Uh, let's see. Additionally, the user has the power to manipulate other pre-existing gases at any given location and can suffocate their opponents by removing the gas in the area. This gives the user two options to instantly defeat their opponent, allowing Caesar to knock out Luffy after realizing that Luffy was immune to poison. However, the effect of the area of effect is finite, so if someone escapes the oxygen-free zone, they will be able to breathe again. It's not just all of the air, it's just in a certain area around Caesar. They can even merge with such gases to enhance their own power, depending on the gas being absorbed, all the while being immune to the toxic effects themselves. The gas form appears to be weak against fire, although this is mitigated by the user's ability to minimize oxygen levels in the surrounding area, preventing combustion. On the other hand, it seems to take some concentration or is only possible while solid to manipulate the gas, as Usopp and Nami could breathe again when Brownbeard struck Caesar with a metal pipe. And there seems to be a range of which the user can control oxygen, them more vulnerable to longer range attacks. In Caesar's case, many of his techniques require external ignition and tools to work. Other than that, the user is also affected by the standard devil fruit weaknesses. So then we go to usage. Caesar Clown has mainly used his fruit as a means of stealth, slipping into flasks and floating into the air. He has enough control over his fruit to move freely and see solids such as a cocktail glass. In battle, Caesar releases poisonous gases that seem to cause instant death to an average victim, ignitable gases of tremendous explosive power, or hallucinatory gases that can make enemies inadvertently fight each other. He can also absorb and remove the oxygen within his vicinity, removing his weakness against fire, as well as force his opponents into unconsciousness or even death via asphyxiation. Out of desperation, he absorbed the H2S gas from Shinokuni into his own body to increase his own size and strength, but that kind of added to the overall weaknesses of Logia users who expand their bodies and thus become a bigger target for people who know armament hockey. Against his better judgment and will, the Straw Hat Pirates forced Caesar to transform his own body into a hot air balloon strong enough to lift a basket filled with 5 people. Before that, Caesar was also convinced to let himself become a makeshift net in order to contribute to the Straw Hats' plan and escape the Big Mom Pirates. And that's pretty much what Caesar has done with his power. Then we move on to the Yuki Yuki no Mi, and then lastly, the Mori Mori no Mi. Yuki Yuki no Mi, aka Snow Snow Fruit. Strength and weaknesses. This is going to be short. The fruit's major strength is that it allows the user to transform themselves into snow. Monet had an extreme level of resistance, if not outright immunity, towards cold due to her devil fruit's element, much like Kuzan's Hie Hie no Mi powers. While the two devil fruits have similar abilities, the Hie Hie no Mi is superior to the Yuki Yuki no Mi. Two major differences in the fruit's abilities are that Monet's intangibility as snow was not always a solid form, since she was able to choose to compress the snow, and that she couldn't directly freeze her targets solid. As a Logia, Monet could let physical attacks pass through her without injury and could only get wounded with the use of armament Haki, Sea Stone, and Heat. Her attacks could also be stopped if her body was broken apart before she could execute her attacks. She also has a weakness to heat, as shown when Nami used her Climb Attack's Heat Egg to damage her wing. Furthermore, she could also lose control of her body's transformation if she became mentally unstable, as shown when Zoro cut her in half non-lethally, and the resulting fear and anxiety after she thought she was going to die. Other than that, she was also vulnerable to other standard Devil Fruit weaknesses. Then the last part, the usage. As a Logia, Monet could turn herself into snow to avoid attacks by letting them pass through her, or by floating around attacks. She could also manipulate the density of the snow to form solid snow barriers. These barriers are extremely hard, making it difficult to destroy them, but she could easily pass through her snow barriers. She also had the ability to weaken someone and make them lose consciousness by hugging them, using her cold body to sap their own body heat. By transforming into snow, she could secretly hide in snowstorms, as seen when she followed Trafalgar Law through the icelands without being noticed. She could also release a massive snowstorm to take advantage of the cold to weaken her opponents in a similar way. She also used her powers to change the battlefield into a snowfield so she could dive into the snow from her snowstorm to hide, move, trap, and attack her enemies quickly. And that's the capabilities of Monet. Now we move on to the final Logia user, and by far one of the more unique ones. The More More no Mi! Strength and weaknesses, and it's a bit extensive, but it's not too long. Strength and weaknesses. A holder of this Logia power can create, control, and transform into plants, namely those that make up forests. The user's body can partially or fully take on the characteristics of trees, from wood to foliage, as well as flowers, vines, grass, moss, etc., making them akin to a living forest, and making this the only known Logia whose element comes as a form of organic matter. The plants spawned by this ability can be grown rapidly and made to move around freely, seemingly being not limited by the rigidity and stiffness that some plants, like trees, normally possess. The user can generate large quantities of plants to unleash overwhelming large-scale attacks, like underground root tentacles that can ensnare multiple targets or even enormous creatures like a dragon at once. Additionally, these plants can rapidly absorb any liquid they touch, which includes dehydrating living creatures after impaling them, leaving them as shriveled husks. Another benefit bestowed by this Logia is that the user can undergo photosynthesis with their plant-like body, allowing them to be sustained indefinitely so long as they are exposed to light and water, even without conventionally eating. The user also appears to have direct influence on a land's fertility, leaving behind a trail of various plant life wherever they walk. Local levels of pollution do not seem to hinder the plant growth, meaning even a deadly poisonous wasteland, as is the case of the wastelands throughout all of Wano, can become brimming with lush plant life almost immediately after a visit from the user of this Logia. It is currently unknown if this is a passively active effect or something the ability user has to do on their own. It's unknown if Ryokugyu's Logia fruit is awakened and that's allowing him to affect the environment around him, or if this is just a special trait of the fruit in general. It's unknown. Unlike most other Logia devil fruits, this fruit turns the user into a solid element instead of a fluid, making it similar to the Hiei Hiei no Mi, the chili fruit, or the ice fruit, which deals with equally solid ice. This means that the user is unable to let attacks pass through their body, though said attacks are still harmless to them if their opponent does not use armament haki, as they can simply regenerate from wounds like any Logia. The user is also capable of transforming themselves into a massive golem-like form composed out of flora that boasts an astounding degree of durability. Should the user's transformation take significant damage, they can remove themselves from it and regenerate as a sapling sprouting out of the ground before rapidly growing and returning to their original form. While the fruit's power has an obvious weakness to fire, the user can train and adapt themselves against this fault by making their wooden body fireproof. That said, the user is still vulnerable to powerful enough fire techniques that can instantly incinerate their body, as is the case when Momonosuke uses Porobrese on Aramaki during their initial encounter. Aside from that, the user displays all the general weaknesses common to devil fruits. Usage! Ryokugyu utilizes his abilities primarily in combat. He can use wooden, root-like tentacles to restrain enemies, enwrapping them and absorbing the moisture out of their bodies to sap their strength until they have become too weak to fight back. Scary ability. Ryokugyu appears to be able to taste liquids he absorbs through his wood, shown when he impaled a barrel of alcohol with a branch and remarked on its flavor. During combat, Ryokugyu was seen transforming himself into a large tree man, using this large version to attack opponents with his enlarged fists, taking advantage of the resulting height difference. This enables him to even fight as high as the large tree version he uses. For combat. Ryokugyu can also perform highly unorthodox feats with the plants he generates, such as growing a giant flower on his back and using it to fly by spinning it rapidly like a propeller. He can use armament hockey in conjunction with his plant appendages to increase their penetrating power. And that's how he was able to just impale various vast amounts of members of the Beast Pirates, including King and Queen. Ryokugyu is also well aware of his natural weakness against flames, although as a Marine Admiral he has worked to circumvent this, even mocking those who failed to burn him down. And then, of course, we have the one big named attack, well, two named attack that we have here. We have the Kiniku Mori Mori, which is Groves of Wrath, or literally meaning Forbidden Hate Forest, where here Ryokugyu generates woods from his arms, plants them into the ground, and manipulates the roots rising from the surface to shape into a giant tree golem that covers his original body, greatly increasing his strength and durability. His tree form is able to reach gigantic sizes, as seen in his fight against Morley and towered over the infrastructure of Marijua. Then we have Bokkarin, which is called Firebreak Forest. Ryokugyu makes his tree body less susceptible to fire-based attacks. Literally can just make it so that the one true weakness to trees is less likely to affect him. So let's just read the little trivia, and then we'll be done. The fruit's ability is similar to the non-canon Mosa Mosa no Mi, as both enable their consumers to control plants and make them grow. Although the Mosa Mosa no Mi can only control existing plants and does not enable the user to transform. It also has a similar ability of the Suna Suna no Mi and the Shibo Shibo no Mi of drawing their opponents. The introduction of the Mori Mori no Mi marks the longest time between the introduction of Logia-type devil fruits, 371 chapters and 472 episodes, since the introduction of the Yuki Yuki no Mi. So the last time we had the longest period of time we had between two new Logia fruits being shown through the series was when we met Monet, went through Punk Hazard, went through Dressrosa, went through Zoe, went through Whole Cake Island, went through Wano. That's how long it was since our last new Logia type. And that is the Mori Mori no Mi. And of course, you have the non-canon ones, but I'm not interested in talking about those because I'm only talking about the canon ones. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's discussion. Well, this concludes my entire Devil Fruit deep dive for the Devil Fruits of One Piece. We started with Paramecia, we continue with Zoan, and we end with Logia. And with that, I take my glasses off because it's been a long session. And I say to you, this has been a wonderful talking about One Piece. I'll probably be doing some more stuff like this later on, but it won't be right now. But overall, I enjoyed talking about one of my most favorite aspects of One Piece. And I'm looking forward to the next time when we talk about something else. Not just specifically about One Piece, but maybe about My Hero or Jujutsu Kaisen. But we'll see how things go as the month goes on. But I'm done for the day, ladies and gentlemen. I've talked your ears off long enough as it is. All I can say to you is, hope you all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Well, actually, you know what? There is one thing I want to say before I go. I really hope Oda shows us what a Logia Awakening looks like. Because these Logia fruits, they're already overpowered. Amongst the strongest, period. Just their entire category is pretty much the strongest grouping. I really hope Oda shows us an Awakening at some point. Just thought I'd get that out so I don't leave it out. So, with that being said, hope y'all enjoyed. Can't wait to see you all in my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already, because I am always looking forward to entertaining you. So have a fantastic day, and once again, as always, later, peoples!